The wind screamed past her face at 140 miles per hour. Staff Sergeant Elena Voss had exactly 4 seconds of consciousness left before the lack of oxygen would claim her, and in those 4 seconds, she saw 3 things with perfect clarity. The open cargo door of the Chinook helicopter 800 feet above her. The faces of the 2 crew chiefs who had just thrown her out, their expressions blank and cold. And Major Kyle Brennan standing behind them, watching her fall with something that almost looked like satisfaction. Then the cliff face rose up and slammed into her left side, and everything went dark. 72 hours earlier, Elena had walked into the briefing room at Forward Operating Base Kandahar with a cup of coffee that had gone cold 3 hours ago and a headache that felt like it was trying to split her skull in half. The night before, she had spent 11 hours on overwatch while a patrol cleared a village 16 clicks south. 11 hours of watching shadows through her scope. 11 hours of waiting for a threat that never materialized. That was the job. Most people did not understand that being a sniper meant more boredom than action, more patience than glory. The briefing room smelled like stale sweat and the kind of coffee that could strip paint off a Humvee. 16 soldiers sat in folding chairs, their faces showing various stages of exhaustion. Elena took her seat in the back corner, the same spot she always chose. Not because she was shy, but because from there she could see the entire room and both exits. Old habits from sniper training died hard. Major Brennan strode in like he owned the place, which technically he did. He commanded their battalion, and he moved with the kind of confidence that came from spending more time in air-conditioned offices than in the field. He was tall, square-jawed, with the kind of appearance that recruiting posters loved. His uniform was pressed sharp enough to cut paper. Elena had been in country for 9 months, and she had seen Brennan maybe twice outside the wire. "Good morning, people," Brennan said, his voice carrying that particular authority that officers practiced in front of mirrors. "We have a high-priority convoy movement scheduled for 0600 tomorrow. 16 vehicles carrying supplies and equipment to COP Viking in the Kos province. The route takes them through the Sharana Pass, which, as you all know, is a choke point we have had issues with before." He clicked a remote, and a topographic map appeared on the projector screen. Elena leaned forward slightly, her eyes already reading the terrain. The pass was a natural ambush site. High ridges on both sides, limited visibility around the curves, multiple positions where an enemy could set up and control the entire valley. "We will have air support on standby and 2 Apache gunships rotating overhead," Brennan continued. "But I want boots on the ground providing overwatch. Sergeant Voss, you will insert via helicopter to this position." He pointed to a ridge on the northern side of the pass. "Establish observation, provide early warning, and cover the convoy as it moves through. Simple recon and overwatch. Questions?" Elena studied the map more carefully. The insertion point Brennan had chosen was tactically sound, good elevation and clear sight lines. But there was another ridge, 600 meters to the west, that offered better coverage of the eastern approach. "Sir," she said, her voice quiet but clear, "request permission to modify insertion point to grid reference November Papa 47328. Better coverage of both approaches and a cleaner exfil route if things go sideways." The room went quiet. A few of the other soldiers turned to look at her. Brennan's expression did not change, but something shifted in his eyes. Something cold. "The insertion point stands as briefed, Sergeant," he said. "We have run the numbers. Your concern is noted, but unnecessary." Elena held his gaze for 3 seconds, then nodded. "Yes, sir." The briefing continued with the standard details about radio frequencies, call signs, and contingency plans. Elena stopped listening closely and instead focused on the map, memorizing every feature, every elevation change, every possible position an enemy might use. It was what she did, what she was good at. Reading terrain, calculating distances, seeing the battlefield as a 3-dimensional chessboard. After the briefing ended, the soldiers filed out in small groups, talking quietly among themselves. Elena gathered her notes and stood to leave. "Sergeant Voss," Brennan called out. "A word." She turned back. The room had emptied except for the 2 of them. Brennan stood by the map, his arms crossed. I appreciate initiative, he said, his tone pleasant, but his eyes hard. But when I give an order, I expect it to be followed without debate, especially in front of other soldiers. Understood? Understood, sir, Elena said. I was only trying to ensure mission success. I am sure you were, Brennan said. He smiled, but it did not reach his eyes. You have an excellent record, Voss. Highest marks in sniper school. 14 confirmed kills. Multiple commendations. But out here, what matters is not how good you think you are. It is whether you can follow orders. Remember that. Yes, sir, Elena said. Dismissed, Brennan said. Elena left the briefing room and headed across the compound toward the armory. The sun was already brutal, turning the dust into a fine haze that caught in the throat. She had 6 hours to prep her gear, get some sleep, and be ready for the O400 helicopter insertion. In the armory, she checked out her rifle, an M24 sniper weapon system that she had fired so many times she could disassemble it blindfolded. She cleaned it even though it was already clean, checked the scope even though she had checked it yesterday, loaded magazines even though they were already loaded. Repetition created reliability. Reliability kept you alive. Hey Voss, a voice called out. She turned to see Corporal Danny Reeves, one of the helicopter crew chiefs, walking toward her with a clipboard. Just got the manifest for tomorrow. You are riding with us. Reeves was a good guy, former infantry who had cross-trained to aviation. He had a wife and 2 kids back in North Carolina, and he showed everyone pictures whether they wanted to see them or not. What time is Wheels up? Elena asked. 0400, Reeves confirmed. We will drop you at your position, then swing back around to provide aerial observation while the convoy moves through. Standard stuff. Sound good, Elena said. Reeves hesitated, then lowered his voice. Hey, between you and me, be careful out there tomorrow. Word is the Major has been acting weird lately. Short temper, secretive. Just keep your head down and do the job. Elena nodded. Always do. That evening, she tried to sleep, but could not. Something about Brennan's reaction to her suggestion nagged at her. It was not unusual for officers to shut down input from enlisted soldiers, but the coldness in his eyes had been different. Personal. At 3:30, she geared up. Plate carrier loaded with ceramic plates, radio, first aid kit, water, ammunition. Her rifle secured across her chest. Helmet, gloves, knee pads. 70 pounds of equipment that she carried like it was part of her body. The Chinook helicopter sat on the pad, with rotors already spinning, the twin turbines creating a deafening roar. Reeves gave her a thumbs up from the crew chief position. Elena climbed aboard and strapped into the canvas seat along the fuselage wall. As the helicopter lifted off into the pre-dawn darkness, she looked out the open cargo door at the base, shrinking below. In 6 hours, the convoy would begin its movement. Her job was simple: watch, warn, protect. What she did not know was that in the darkness behind her, additional cargo was being loaded onto the helicopter. Cargo that was not on any manifest. And Major Brennan was climbing aboard with his sat phone in his hand and an expression that promised violence. The helicopter insertion went exactly as planned, which should have been Elena's first warning that something was wrong. In 9 months of combat operations, nothing ever went exactly as planned. The Chinook descended toward the ridge at 0545, the sky just beginning to lighten from black to deep purple. The crew chief gave her the 2-minute warning, and Elena moved to the edge of the cargo ramp, her rifle secured across her chest, her pack heavy on her shoulders. Below her, the ridge was a dark mass of rock and scrub vegetation, the terrain rough but manageable. The helicopter flared, the nose pitching up as the pilots bled off speed. The wheels touched down with barely a bump, and Elena was moving before the aircraft had fully settled. 3 seconds to clear the ramp, 5 seconds to get clear of the rotor wash. Then she was prone behind a boulder as the Chinook lifted off and banked away, its engines fading into the distance. Silence rushed in to fill the void. Elena lay still for 60 seconds, listening, watching, letting her senses adjust to the environment. No movement. No sounds except the wind moving through the rocks and the distant call of some predator bird hunting in the dawn. She keyed her radio. Overwatch in position, she transmitted. Beginning setup. Copy that. Overwatch came to response from the convoy commander, a captain she had never met named Flores. Convoy departing base in 15 minutes. ETA to your position is 0640. Elena rose to a crouch and moved to her primary firing position, a spot she had identified from the aerial photos during the briefing. It offered a clear view of the valley below and the pass where the convoy would travel. She set up her rifle on its bipod, confirmed her range card with laser rangefinder readings, and settled in a wait. The sun rose slowly, turning the sky from purple to orange to the harsh white that meant another day of 100-degree heat. Elena sipped water from her camelback and scanned the valley through her scope. Every rock, every bush, every shadow got examined and cataloged. This was the part of the job that required the most discipline. Staying alert when nothing was happening. Maintaining focus when your body wanted to relax. At 0635, she spotted the first vehicle. A Humvee with a gunner in the turret, leading the convoy. Behind it came to rest. Supply trucks, fuel tankers, more Humvees providing security. 16 vehicles total, strung out along the road like beads on a wire. Elena tracked them through her scope, watching for any sign of threat. The convoy moved steadily through the pass, the vehicles maintaining proper spacing, the gunners alert and scanning their sectors. Professional, disciplined. The lead vehicle cleared her field of view at 0720. The tail vehicle followed 10 minutes later. Elena maintained position for another 30 minutes as protocol required, making sure no follow-on attack was coming. Then she began breaking down her position, packing her gear for extraction. That was when she heard it. The distinctive sound of heavy vehicles approaching from the east. Not the convoy. Something else. Elena went prone again and brought her scope to bear on the eastern approach. 3 vehicles came into view. 2 Toyota Hilux trucks and a larger cargo truck. They were moving slowly, cautiously, and they were not local civilians. The men in the trucks were armed with military-grade weapons, and they were wearing a mix of military surplus gear that marked them as something between insurgents and organized militia. Elena keyed her radio to report the contact, but before she could transmit, the vehicles stopped at a position in the valley below her. Not in the pass where the convoy had traveled, but at a clearing about 800 meters to her southeast. The men dismounted from the vehicles and took up security positions. Professional movements. Trained. Then the cargo truck opened its rear door, and Elena's world tilted sideways. Major Brennan climbed out of the truck. Elena froze. Her finger hovered over the radio transmit button, but she did not press it. She watched through her scope, her mind trying to process what she was seeing. There was no legitimate reason for a U.S. Army major to be meeting with armed men in the middle of hostile territory outside of official operations. No good reason. Brennan walked to the leader of the group, a tall man with a heavy black beard and wearing an Afghan Paykal hat. They shook hands. Not the cautious greeting of enemies meeting under truce. The familiar greeting of business partners. 2 of the armed men began unloading crates from the cargo truck. Elena adjusted her scope's focus and felt her stomach drop. The crates were marked with U.S. military stenciling. She could not read the exact designations from this distance, but she recognized the size and shape. Weapons crates. Brennan was selling U.S. military weapons to the enemy. Elena's heart hammered in her chest. She needed to document this. She pulled out her phone, knowing the risk of the screen glare, but needing evidence. She took 3 photos through her scope, capturing Brennan's face clearly, the weapons crates, the men he was dealing with. She was lining up a 4th photo when she saw Brennan pull out binoculars and begin scanning the ridgelines. Elena went perfectly still. She was wearing camouflage. She was in a good position with natural concealment. But she was also on the ridge Brennan knew she had been inserted on. The ridge he had specifically chosen for her position. Brennan's binoculars swept across the terrain. They passed over her position, continued scanning, then stopped. Came back, locked on exactly where she was hiding. For 3 seconds, Elena stared through her scope at Brennan as Brennan stared through his binoculars at her. 800 meters apart, but she could see his expression change. Could see the moment he realized she had seen everything. Brennan lowered his binoculars and said something to the bearded man. Then he pulled out a radio. Elena's radio crackled to life. Overwatch, this is Major Brennan. What is your status? She did not respond. Her mind was racing through options, none of them good. She was 12 kilometers from base, on foot, in hostile territory. The extraction helicopter was not scheduled to pick her up for another 4 hours. Brennan controlled the helicopters. Brennan controlled the radio frequencies. Brennan controlled everything. Overwatch, respond. Brennan's voice came again, harder now. Elena made her decision. She keyed the radio. Overwatch here. Position secure. Convoy passed without incident. Ready for extraction. There was a pause. Then, copy that, Overwatch. Extraction helicopter is inbound to your position. ETA 10 minutes. Mark your position with smoke when you hear rotors. 10 minutes. Not 4 hours. He was sending them now. Elena began moving immediately, breaking down her position, grabbing her essential gear, leaving behind anything that would slow her down. She had maybe 8 minutes before that helicopter arrived, and she needed to be somewhere else when it did. She moved along the ridge, staying low, using every bit of cover. Behind her, she heard the distinctive thump of rotor blades growing louder. She did not look back. She kept moving until she found a cluster of boulders large enough to conceal her, and she wedged herself into a gap between two of them. The Chinook came in fast and loud, flaring over her original position. She watched from her hiding spot as it landed. Saw Corporal Reeves jump out with another crew chief, both of them looking around, confused. Then she saw two other men climb out. Not regular crew. These men moved like infantry, like operators. They spread out, searching. Her radio crackled. Voss, this is Reeves. Where are you? We are at your position. Elena stayed silent, pressing herself deeper into the rocks. The two men searched for 5 minutes while Reeves and the pilot waited, clearly confused. Then one of them spoke into a radio. Elena could not hear the words, but she saw the reaction. Both searchers turned and looked directly at the ridgeline where she was hiding. Someone had given them her new position. Brennan. He must have seen which direction she had moved. The searchers started moving toward her hiding spot, weapons ready. Elena had maybe 3 minutes before they reached her position. She could try to run, but they would see her. She could try to fight, but it was 2 against 1, and she was a sniper, not an infantry soldier. The radio crackled again. Voss, Reeves's voice said, and now he sounded worried. Major Brennan wants to talk to you. He says there has been a development. Please respond. The searchers were 200 meters away now, moving carefully but steadily toward her position. Elena made her choice. She keyed the radio. Reeves, she transmitted. Tell the Major I am sorry, but I need to stay dark. Possible hostile activity in the area. I will make my way to alternate extraction point and contact when secure. She clicked off the radio and pulled the battery, killing the signal. Then she started moving again, this time heading west toward rougher terrain, toward the deeper mountains where a helicopter could not easily follow. Behind her, she heard Reeves calling her name, heard the Chinook's engines spooling up. Then she heard something that made her blood run cold. Brennan's voice over the radio, broadcast on all frequencies so everyone would hear. All units be advised. Overwatch has gone dark and is not responding to commands. She may be injured or compromised. If anyone has contact, report immediately. We need to bring our soldier home. He had just made her the target. Made every friendly unit in the area think she needed rescuing. Made it impossible for her to contact anyone without revealing her position to him. Elena kept moving, climbing higher into the mountains as the sun climbed higher into the sky. She had no food except 1 protein bar. No water except the half camelback she had left. No support except her rifle and her training. And somewhere behind her, Major Brennan was coming with a helicopter full of men who would make sure she never made it home. Elena had been moving for 2 hours when the Chinook found her again. She heard it before she saw it, the distinctive whoop-whoop-whoop of the twin rotors echoing off the mountain walls. She was climbing through a narrow ravine, her hands scraped raw from pulling herself up over boulder fields, her lungs burning from the altitude and exertion. The helicopter came in low over the ridge behind her, and she knew they had her. There was nowhere to hide in the ravine, no cover that would conceal her from aerial observation. She pressed herself against the rock wall anyway, knowing it was futile, watching as the Chinook swept overhead. It circled once, then came back and hovered 200 feet above her. The crew door was open, and she could see Corporal Reeves leaning out, looking down at her. He was shouting something, but the rotor wash was too loud for her to hear. Then Major Brennan appeared in the doorway beside him. Elena's hand moved instinctively to her rifle, but she stopped herself. Shooting at a friendly helicopter was a line she could not cross. Not yet. Not unless she was absolutely certain they meant to kill her. The helicopter descended, looking for a place to land. The ravine was too narrow, so it moved to a flat area about 300 meters ahead of her position. As soon as it touched down, four men jumped out. Not regular crew, combat troops. They moved with the precision of special operations, spreading out to cut off her escape routes. Elena turned and scrambled back the way she had come, but two more men appeared at the mouth of the ravine behind her. They had inserted another team while she was focused on the helicopter ahead. She was trapped. The soldiers advanced from both directions, weapons raised but not aimed directly at her. They were moving like this was a rescue operation, not a capture. Professional, careful. They did not want to hurt her. They thought they were saving her. Elena raised her hands, letting her rifle hang from its sling. The lead soldier reached her first, a staff sergeant with kind eyes and a name tape that read Martinez. "Sergeant Voss," he said, his voice calm and reassuring. "You are safe now. We are here to help. Are you injured?" Elena looked past him at the helicopter, at Major Brennan climbing out, brushing dust from his uniform, at the cold calculation in his eyes as he watched her. "I am not injured," Elena said quietly. "Then why did you go dark?" Martinez asked. "The major has been worried sick. He launched a full search and rescue operation." Brennan walked toward them, his expression shifting to something that almost looked like concern. "Sergeant Voss," he called out. "Thank God you are all right. What happened? Why did you disable your radio?" Elena met his eyes and knew she was looking at her death. She could see in the way he held himself, in the slight tension around his mouth. He could not let her leave this mountain alive. Not after what she had seen. But he needed to maintain the facade. Needed witnesses to believe this was a legitimate rescue. "I thought I saw hostile movement," Elena said, choosing her words carefully. "I went dark to avoid compromising my position. When I tried to move to an alternate extraction point, I must have gotten turned around in the terrain. It was a plausible lie. Mountains could be disorienting. Soldiers got lost. It happened." Brennan studied her face for a long moment. "Did you see anything else, Sergeant? Anything unusual?" "No, sir," Elena said. "Just the convoy passing through as planned." Brennan's eyes flickered to the phone clipped to her vest. The phone with 3 photos of him committing treason. While Brennan said, his voice warm and paternal, "You gave us quite a scare, but the important thing is you are safe. Let's get you back to base. You must be exhausted." He gestured toward the helicopter. Martinez put a hand on Elena's shoulder, guiding her forward. The other soldiers formed up around her, a protective escort that felt more like a prison guard detail. Elena walked toward the Chinook, her mind racing through scenarios. Once she was aboard that helicopter, she would be completely under Brennan's control. 12,000 feet in the air with nowhere to run. He would take her phone. He would erase the evidence. And then what? An accident? A malfunction? A tragic fall? She climbed on a helicopter and strapped into a seat along the fuselage wall. Martinez sat beside her, still playing the role of concerned rescuer. The other soldiers took positions throughout the cargo bay. Reeves was back at his crew chief station, looking relieved that they had found her. Brennan was the last aboard. He sat across from Elena, his eyes never leaving her face. The helicopter lifted off, and the ground dropped away beneath them. Elena watched the mountains recede below, watched the ravine where she had been trapped become a thin line, then disappear entirely. The helicopter climbed to 800 feet, and she felt her stomach tighten. Brennan leaned forward, his voice barely audible over the engine noise. "Your phone, Sergeant. I need to check it for any intelligence you might have gathered." Standard debrief protocol. Elena's hand moved to the phone on her vest, but she did not unclip it. If she gave it to him now, she had nothing. No leverage, no proof, no hope. "Sir, I did not gather any intelligence," she said. "It was just an Overwatch mission." Nevertheless, Brennan said, his voice hardening, "I need the phone." Martinez was watching the exchange now, his expression confused. "Sir," he said hesitantly, "is there a problem?" Brennan's hand moved to his sidearm, a casual gesture that could have been adjusting his belt or could have been a threat. "No problem, Sergeant Martinez. Just following protocol." Elena made her decision. She unclipped the phone and held it up. Then, in one smooth motion, she pulled the back off and yanked out the SIM card and memory card. She held them up so Brennan could see them. Then before anyone could react, she leaned toward the open cargo door and flicked them out into the void. The cards disappeared into the sky, falling 800 feet to the mountains below where they would never be found. Brennan's face went white with rage. Then he smiled, and it was the most terrifying thing Elena had ever seen. "Sergeant Martinez," Brennan said calmly. "Captain Reeves, exit the aircraft, please. I need to speak with Sergeant Voss privately." Martinez frowned. "Sir, we are at 800 feet. There is a clearing 2 clicks northeast," Brennan said. "Set down there and wait for my signal." "This is highly irregular," Reeves said from the crew chief position. "Sir, I cannot leave a passenger without crew aboard." Brennan stood up, and his hand was definitely on his sidearm now. "That was an order, Corporal." The pilot's voice came over the intercom. "Sir, regulations require." Brennan pulled his sidearm and pointed it at the ceiling. "Everyone off this aircraft right now, except Voss and the 2 men I designate. That is a direct order from your commanding officer." The soldiers exchanged glances. They were confused, alarmed, but trained to follow orders. Martinez started to unbuckle his harness. Reeves was arguing with the pilot over the intercom. Elena saw it happening in slow motion, saw Brennan nod to 2 of the soldiers, the ones who had moved like operators, saw them stay seated while everyone else prepared to exit, saw the helicopter beginning to descend toward the clearing. She had maybe 60 seconds before the good soldiers left, and only the bad ones remained. Elena unbuckled her harness and stood up. Brennan's pistol swung toward her. "Sit down, Sergeant," he said. "No, sir," Elena said. She took a step toward the cargo door. The helicopter was at 600 feet now, descending fast. Brennan fired. The shot went wide, deliberately. He could not kill her in front of witnesses, not when those witnesses still thought this was a rescue. But the gunshot did what he wanted. It created chaos. Martinez shouted something. Reeves was screaming into the radio. The pilot jerked the helicopter, making it lurch sideways. Elena stumbled toward the cargo door. Brennan moved fast, crossing the cargo bay in 3 strides. He grabbed Elena's vest and pulled her away from the door. She twisted, trying to break his grip, but he was bigger and stronger. The helicopter leveled out at 400 feet. Martinez was trying to get between them. The 2 operators Brennan had brought were moving now, grabbing Martinez and pushing him back. Elena drove her elbow into Brennan's ribs. He grunted, but did not let go. Instead, he wrapped his other arm around her throat, pulling her into a chokehold. "You saw too much," he hissed in her ear. "You should have stayed quiet. Should have taken the easy way." The helicopter was at 200 feet now, coming in to land. Elena could see the clearing below, see the safe ground where this would end with her arrest or worse. She stopped fighting against his grip and instead drove her weight backward, using his hold as leverage. They stumbled together toward the open cargo door. Brennan tried to adjust, tried to pull them away from the edge, but Elena hooked her foot behind his ankle. They fell together, tangled up, momentum carrying them toward the door. Martinez shouted. Reeves lunged for them. The operators were too far away. Elena and Brennan hit the edge of the cargo door together. For one frozen instant, they teetered on the threshold, 800 feet of empty air below them. Then Brennan made his choice. He let go of Elena's vest and grabbed for the doorframe, saving himself. And Elena fell. The wind caught her immediately, spinning her, the ground rushing up impossibly fast. She saw the helicopter above her, saw faces in the doorway, growing smaller, saw the cliff face rising up to meet her. She hit the rocks at terminal velocity, and the world exploded into pain and darkness. But somewhere in that darkness, one thought survived. She was still alive, and Brennan did not know it yet. Pain was the first thing that returned. Not the sharp, immediate pain of the impact, but a deep, grinding agony that radiated from every part of Elena's body. She tried to move and discovered that breathing hurt, thinking hurt, existing hurt. She forced her eyes open and saw rock inches from her face. Gray stones streaked with minerals, small patches of lichen growing in the cracks. She was lying on her side on a narrow ledge, her body wedged between two boulders. Above her, maybe 30 feet up, was the cliff face she had hit. Below her, she could hear water running. Elena tried to inventory her injuries without moving. Her left side felt wrong, like something inside had broken and shifted. Her right leg screamed whenever she tried to flex it. Her shoulder was dislocated, the joint sitting at an angle that made her want to vomit. Her helmet was gone. Blood ran down her face from a gash somewhere in her scalp. She should be dead. The fall from 800 feet should have killed her instantly. But she had hit the cliff face first, and the impact had slowed her descent just enough. Then she had tumbled down the rocky slope, bouncing between outcroppings, each impact breaking her fall by inches until she had landed here on this ledge instead of continuing all the way to the valley floor. Luck. Impossible. Ridicule. But luck would not keep her alive for long. Elena listened for the helicopter. She could hear in the distance, the rotors echoing off the mountains. They were searching for her body. Brennan would want confirmation, would want to see her corpse to be certain she was dead. She needed to move, needed to find cover before they spotted her on this exposed ledge. Elena gritted her teeth and pushed herself up to a sitting position. The movement sent lightning bolts of agony through her chest. Broken ribs. At least 3, maybe more. Every breath felt like someone was driving a knife between her bones. Her right leg was gashed open, the wound deep enough that she could see muscle beneath the torn fabric of her uniform. Blood was still flowing, but not spurting. No arterial damage. She pulled the compression bandage from her first aid kit with shaking hands and wrapped the wound tight enough to slow the bleeding. The dislocated shoulder was worse. She could not use her right arm at all, and the pain was making her vision blur. She knew what she needed to do, had learned it in combat lifesaver training, had practiced it on mannequins and volunteers, had never imagined she would need to do it to herself. Elena wedged her right elbow against a boulder and took 3 deep breaths, each one sending fresh waves of pain through her broken ribs. Then she threw her weight sideways, using the rock as a fulcrum. The shoulder joint popped back into place with a sound like a gunshot. Elena bit down on her sleeve to keep from screaming. Tears streamed down her face. Black spots danced across her vision. But when the pain receded enough for her to think again, she could move her arm. The helicopter was getting closer. She could see it now, flying a search pattern across the cliff face, methodically checking every ledge and outcropping. Elena forced herself to her feet. Her right leg nearly buckled, but she caught herself against the boulder. She looked around for options. The ledge she was on extended about 10 feet to her left before ending at a crack in the rock face. A cave opening. Small, maybe just big enough for her to squeeze through. She limped toward it, each step sending fresh agony through her leg. Behind her, the helicopter was less than a quarter mile away now. She could see figures in the cargo bay, men with binoculars scanning the rocks. Elena reached the cave opening and wedged herself inside. It was barely large enough for her to fit, the rocks scraping against her shoulders and chest. She pushed deeper, ignoring the pain, ignoring the feeling of the walls closing in around her. The opening led to a narrow tunnel that sloped downward into darkness. The sound of the helicopter grew louder. It was right above her now, hovering, the rotor wash sending dust and small rocks cascading down the cliff face. Elena pressed herself against the tunnel wall and held her breath. A voice echoed from above, distorted by the wind and engines, but still recognizable. "Brennan, do you see anything?" "Negative, sir. No sign of a body on any of the accessible ledges. She could have fallen all the way to the river." "Keep searching. I need confirmation." The helicopter moved on, continuing its search pattern. Elena waited until the sound faded before she let herself breathe again. Each breath felt like someone was twisting broken glass in her chest. She pulled out her flashlight with her left hand, the right still too weak from the dislocation to be useful. The beam illuminated rough, stone walls extending deeper into the mountain. The tunnel widened after a few feet, opening into a larger space. Elena crawled forward, using her good leg to push, her injured leg dragging behind. The tunnel felt endless, each movement an exercise in torture, but finally she emerged into a chamber large enough to stand upright. She swept the flashlight around and froze. This was not a natural cave. The walls were too straight, too deliberate. Someone had carved this space out of the rock. And the debris on the floor was not natural either. Rusted metal, rotted wood, shell casings. Elena's light fell on a pile of equipment in the corner. Old crates with Cyrillic lettering, a battered radio set, boxes of ammunition, the brass tarnished but possibly still functional. And leaning against the wall, wrapped in oil-stained canvas, were two rifles. She limped over and unwrapped the first one. A Soviet SVD Dragunov sniper rifle, probably 40 years old, but preserved well enough that it might still function. The second rifle was an AK-47, standard military issue. This was a Soviet supply cache from the 1980s, left over from when the Russians had occupied Afghanistan. Hidden in this cave and forgotten for decades. Elena's tactical mind started working despite the pain. The cache gave her options. Weapons, ammunition, maybe supplies. She searched through the crates methodically, cataloging what was usable. 3 magazines of 7.62x50 for MMR ammunition for the Dragunov. Probably 200 rounds for the AK-47. A box of Soviet-era field rations that were decades expired but might still provide calories. A water purification kit. Medical supplies that were too old to trust. And buried at the bottom of one crate, a radio. Elena pulled out the radio with trembling hands. It was heavy, built to Soviet military specifications that prioritized durability over portability. The battery compartment was corroded, but the components looked intact. If she could find a power source, if the circuits had not degraded too much, it might work. She tried the power switch. Nothing happened. The battery was dead, as expected, but radios were simple machines. Power in, signal out. If she could rig something, anything that could provide electricity, she might be able to transmit. The flashlight. Her flashlight ran on lithium batteries. She had 3 spares in her kit. Lithium batteries put out 3 volts each. The radio needed 12 volts minimum. For batteries in series would give her 12 volts. If she could wire them correctly. Elena spent the next hour working with her knife and the wire from the old radio set, stripping insulation, connecting batteries in series, jury-rigging a power supply that would have made her instructors weep. Her hands shook from pain and exhaustion. Twice, she had to stop to vomit from the combination of head trauma and broken ribs. But finally, she had something that might work. She connected the battery pack to the radio's power terminals. Flipped the switch. The radio's indicator light flickered, died, then glowed a steady amber. Elena's heart leaped. She put on the headset and turned the frequency dial, searching for any active channel. Static filled her ears. She kept turning, slowly, methodically. Then she heard voices. American voices. Encrypted military communications on what sounded like a tactical operations frequency. She could not understand the words through the encryption, but she could hear the cadence, the professional tone. And then, clear as day, she heard Brennan's voice transmitting in the clear. All units, this is Overwatch Actual. Casualty report. Staff Sergeant Elena Voss confirmed killed in action. Fell from helicopter during extraction. Search and rescue has been suspended. Body presumed lost in the river. Request casualty assistance team notify next of kin. Elena's hands clenched into fists. He was reporting her death, making it official. Her family would get the notification. Her mother would cry. Her father would accept the folded flag with stoic grief. They would bury an empty casket while she lay broken in this cave. And Brennan would be safe. His secret would die with her. Another voice came over the radio. Colonel Rains, the battalion commander. Copy that. Major Brennan, this is a tragedy. Voss was a fine soldier. Prepare a full incident report. I want to know exactly how this happened. Understood, sir, Brennan replied. It appears she panicked after going dark. Tried to jump from the helicopter when we located her. We could not stop her in time. The lie was perfect. Witnesses would back it up. Martinez and Reeves had seen her struggle with Brennan at the door. They had seen her fall. They would testify that she had been acting erratically, that she had resisted rescue. The story would hold. Elena listened to the conversations for another hour, gathering intelligence. The search had been called off. No one was looking for her anymore. She was officially dead, which meant she was free. Free from the chain of command. Free from having to prove her claims through official channels that Brennan controlled. Free to do what needed to be done. She turned off the radio to conserve battery power. Then she pulled the Dragunov toward her and began inspecting it in detail. The bore was dirty but not rusted. The action worked smoothly. The scope was fogged but usable. Elena had fallen 800 feet and survived. Had crawled broken and bleeding into this cave and found exactly what she needed to fight back. Brennan thought she was dead. That was his first mistake. His second mistake was what he had said over the radio. He would be preparing a full incident report, which meant he would be staying at the forward operating base for at least the next 48 hours, which meant Elena knew exactly where to find him. She had no backup, no support, no official sanction. She was legally dead, armed with a 40-year-old rifle and maybe 200 rounds of ammunition. But she had been a sniper for 8 years, had 14 confirmed kills, had spent countless hours learning to be patient, to plan, to wait for the perfect shot. Brennan had tried to erase her. Instead, he had created something far more dangerous. He had created a ghost with a rifle and nothing left to lose. Elena spent the first day doing nothing but surviving. The cave was dark and cold, and every movement sent fresh waves of pain through her broken body. She forced herself to drink water from the purification kit, filtering the condensation that dripped from the cave walls. She ate one of the Soviet field rations, the food tasting like cardboard and chemicals but providing calories her body desperately needed. Mostly she slept. Her body demanded it, shutting down for hours at a time while it tried to heal the damage. When she woke, she would check the radio, listening to the encrypted chatter and the occasional clear transmission. Brennan was still at the forward operating base, still filing reports, still playing the role of the grieving commander who had lost a soldier. On the second day, Elena could stand without wanting to scream. Her ribs still felt like broken glass grinding together, but the pain had become something she could manage, could compartmentalize. She tested her right leg, putting weight on it gradually. The gash was healing cleanly, no signs of infection yet. She would need to keep it that way. She spent hours working with the Dragunov, disassembling it completely, cleaning every component with oil she found in the cache. The rifle was old but well-maintained, and the Soviets had built their weapons to last. By the time she reassembled it, she knew every spring, every pin, every millimeter of the weapon. The scope was the biggest problem. The lenses were fogged from decades of temperature changes, the reticle barely visible through the haze. But Elena had learned to shoot with iron sights before she ever touched a scope. She could make it work. She test-fired 3 rounds at the back wall of the cave, the reports deafening in the enclosed space. The rifle kicked harder than her M24, the recoil jarring her broken ribs, but the grouping was tight. The weapon was accurate. On the third day, Elena heard something on the radio that made her blood run cold. Major Brennan's voice, transmitting to someone on an encrypted channel that her old Soviet radio could not fully decode. But she caught fragments. Enough to understand. Next delivery scheduled for 0800, 4 days from now. Same location. Increase the usual fee by 20%. Recent complications have made this operation higher risk. Someone responded, the words garbled by encryption, but the tone was clear. Agreement. Confirmation. Brennan was planning another weapons deal. 4 days from now at the same valley where Elena had witnessed the first transaction. He was not stopping, was not even slowing down. He thought he was safe. Elena's hands tightened on the radio. For days. That gave her time to heal, time to plan, time to prepare. But it also meant 4 more days of him walking free while she hid in a cave like a wounded animal. She forced herself to think tactically. What did she need to accomplish? Killing Brennan would be easy. One shot from 800 meters, the same distance she had observed him from before. But killing him solved nothing. He was not working alone. There were others involved, the corrupt captain, the Afghan warlord, possibly more officers in the chain of command. She needed evidence, needed proof that would survive her death if it came to that, needed something that could not be buried or ignored. Elena pulled out her phone, the one she had destroyed the memory cards from. The camera still worked. She had maybe 20% battery left, no way to charge it in the cave. But 20% would be enough to record video if she was careful. She thought about her brother, about the day the army officers had come to her parents' house to deliver the news. Training accident, they had said. Equipment failure. No one's fault. Her brother had died, and the official report had been filed, and nothing had changed. The same safety shortcuts were still being taken. The same officers who had cut corners were still in command. Elena had joined the army to make sure deaths like his mattered. To be the kind of soldier who did things right, who held the line, who protected the people who could not protect themselves. Brennan represented everything she had sworn to fight against. Corruption, betrayal, the kind of evil that wore a uniform and called it self-service. She would not let him win. Elena spent the 4th day scouting. She could not move far with her injuries, but she forced herself to climb out of the cave and survey the terrain. The valley where Brennan conducted his deals was 8 kilometers away. With her injuries, that was a full day's movement, maybe more. She would need to leave soon if she wanted to be in position before the transaction. She made a list of what she needed. Water, food, ammunition, medical supplies for the wound on her leg, the rifle, the phone, and something she could use to carry it all. The old Soviet cache provided most of it. A canvas pack that smelled like mildew and motor oil, but would hold her gear. Water purification tablets. 3 more expired field rations that would have to do. Ammunition for the Dragunov. Bandages for her leg. She fashioned a crude splint for her ribs using strips of cloth and branches from outside the cave. It would not heal them, but it would keep them stable enough that she could move without causing more damage. On the 5th day, Elena's radio intercepted something that changed everything. Colonel Rains was speaking to Major Brennan directly, the conversation in the clear because they were discussing what they thought was a routine administrative matter. Major, I need you to prepare a statement for Sergeant Voss's memorial service. Her family is flying in from Ohio. The ceremony is scheduled for 1400 hours, day after tomorrow. I want you to personally present the flag to her mother. There was a pause. Then Brennan's voice, perfectly controlled, perfectly professional. Of course, sir. It will be my honor. Elena closed her eyes. Her mother was coming. Her father. Maybe her aunts and uncles, the extended family that had been so proud when she joined the army. They would sit through a ceremony celebrating a lie. They would accept a folded flag from the man who had murdered her. And Brennan would stand there in his dress uniform, playing the role of the caring commander, secure in the knowledge that his secret was buried with her empty casket. The rage that filled Elena was like nothing she had ever felt before. It was not the hot, impulsive anger of combat. It was cold, calculating, patient. She would not just expose Brennan. She would destroy him. Elena began her final preparations. She checked the Dragunov one more time, loaded 3 magazines with the Soviet ammunition, packed her gear into the canvas bag. She filled her camelback from the cave's water supply and added purification tablets. Before she left, She took one of the expired field rations and used her knife to carve a message into the cave wall next to where she had found it. Staff Sergeant Elena Voss, 10th Mountain Division. Not dead, not defeated. If you find this, tell my family I never stopped fighting. Then she shouldered her pack, picked up the rifle, and limped out of the cave into the Afghan sunlight. The movement down the mountain was agony. Every step jarred her broken ribs. Her injured leg threatened to give out a dozen times. But Elena had learned long ago that the body could endure far more than the mind believed possible. Pain was just information. Injury was just a problem to solve. She moved slowly, carefully, using every bit of cover the terrain provided. Twice she had to hide as military helicopters passed overhead on routine patrols. Once she spotted a squad of soldiers moving through a valley below her position. She watched them through her scope until they were gone, then continued moving. It took her 18 hours to cover the 8 kilometers to the valley. 18 hours of crawling, climbing, forcing her broken body to do what should have been impossible. By the time she reached the ridge overlooking Brennan's meeting site, the sun was rising on the 6th day. Elena found a position in the rocks, the same type of hide she had used 1,000 times before. Good elevation, clear sight lines, covered and concealed. She could see the entire valley floor, the dirt track where the vehicles would arrive, the clearing where Brennan had conducted his last transaction. She set up the Dragunov on its makeshift bipod and settled in to wait. Her body screamed for rest, for water, for medical attention. But her mind was clear, focused. The memorial service would be starting soon. Her mother would be sitting in a folding chair at the base chapel, surrounded by soldiers in dress uniforms, listening to speeches about her daughter's sacrifice and service. And in 48 hours, when Brennan arrived in this valley to sell more weapons, Elena would be here waiting. She pulled out her phone and checked the battery. 18%. Enough. She opened the camera app and hit record, pointing it at the valley below. My name is Staff Sergeant Elena Voss, she said quietly, her voice hoarse from days without speaking. Serial number 34789-2165. If you're watching this, it means Major Kyle Brennan succeeded in killing me. But before I died, I made sure you would know the truth. She stopped recording to say battery. The next recording would be of Brennan in the act of treason. Evidence that could not be denied or buried. Elena checked her watch. 43 hours until the deal. 43 hours to heal as much as her body could. 43 hours to prepare for the shot that would either expose a traitor or end her life trying. She had survived an 800-foot fall, had crawled broken and bleeding from the wreckage, had spent 6 days alone in a cave with nothing but determination keeping her alive. Brennan thought he had erased her, but Elena Voss was not so easily killed, and in 43 hours, he would learn that the hard way. The memorial service happened while Elena lay in her hide site, watching clouds move across the Afghan sky. She could not see it, but she could imagine it perfectly. The base chapel with its simple wooden pews. The photograph of her in dress uniform, smiling a smile she had never quite felt comfortable wearing. The folded flag on the table, waiting to be presented. Her mother in the front row, wearing black, her father's hand on her shoulder. And Major Brennan, standing at the podium in his service dress uniform with all his ribbons and badges, delivering a eulogy for the woman he had murdered. Elena checked her watch. 1,400 hours. It was happening right now. She wondered what he was saying. Probably something about her dedication, her skill, her sacrifice. Probably using all the right words, hitting all the right emotional notes. Brennan was good at that. Good at performing. Good at making people believe he was something he was not. Her phone buzzed. Impossible. She had no signal out here, no way to receive messages. But the vibration was real. Elena pulled the phone from her vest and stared at the screen. 1 bar of signal. Barely enough. And a text message from a number she did not recognize. Voss, if you're alive, respond. This is Martinez. Elena's heart hammered. Martinez. Staff Sergeant Martinez, who had been on the helicopter, who had tried to help her, who had witnessed Brennan's rage when she destroyed the evidence. Her thumb hovered over the keyboard. Responding meant revealing she was alive. meant trusting someone she barely knew, meant risking everything. But Martinez had seen something that day, had seen enough to have questions, had seen enough to risk sending this message. Elena tiped alive. Brennan tried to kill me. Witnessed him selling weapons to enemy forces. Have proof. Do not trust him. She hit send and waited. The message showed as delivered, but not read. The signal was too weak. It might not go through, might sit in some server somewhere until it was too late to matter. Then 3 dots appeared. Martinez was typing. I knew something was wrong. Brennan's story did not add up. Where are you? Elena posed. Could she trust him? What if Brennan had gotten to him? What if this was a trap? But she was alone on a mountain with broken ribs, a gashed leg, and a 40-year-old rifle. She had no allies, no backup, no support. Sometimes you had to take the risk. 8 clicks northeast of FOB. Overwatch position. Brennan has another deal scheduled for tomorrow, height 100 at Grid, NP, Force of N3. Same valley where I first spotted him. I will have proof. The 3 dots appeared again, then disappeared. Appeared again. Copy. I believe you. But Voss, half the base thinks you went crazy and jumped. The other half thinks you're dead. You cannot come back from this alone. You need official channels. Elena's jaw clenched. Official channels meant the chain of command. Meant going through Brennan's superior officers, many of whom might be involved. Meant trusting a system that had already declared her dead and moved on. Official channels got my brother killed, Elena typed. Shortcuts and corruption that never got investigated because everyone closed ranks. Not this time. Tomorrow I get proof. Then we burn it all down. The dots appeared and disappeared for a long time. Finally, I'm coming to you. Send exact coordinates. We'll bring supplies, medical gear. You should not be alone out there. Elena felt something unfamiliar. Hope. The possibility that maybe she was not as isolated as she thought. She sent him her coordinates, then added, come alone. If Brennan suspects you know I'm alive, you are dead too. Understood. 24 hours. Stay alive, Voss. The signal dropped. Elena stared at the phone until the screen went dark. 24 hours. Martinez would arrive around the same time as Brennan's weapons deal. That complicated things, but it also meant she would have a witness. Someone who could take the evidence if she did not survive. Elena settled back into her position and resumed her watch on the valley. The sun was setting now, painting the rocks in shades of orange and red. Beautiful, in a harsh and unforgiving way. She thought about her brother, about the last time she had seen him alive, 6 years ago before he shipped out to Fort Benning for airborne training. He had been so excited, so proud to be following in their grandfather's footsteps. Their grandfather who had jumped into Normandy on D-Day and survived to tell the story. But her brother had not survived. A faulty static line during a training jump. Equipment that should have been replaced, but was reused to save money. An investigation that concluded it was an unfortunate accident with no one to blame. Elena had read the report, had seen the signatures of the officers who had approved using the old equipment, had watched them get promoted while her brother got a folded flag and a headstone. That was when she had decided to join the army herself. Not for revenge, but to be the kind of soldier who would never cut corners, never prioritize convenience over safety, never let corruption hide behind regulations. And now here she was, hunted by her own commander, officially dead, preparing to expose a conspiracy that went deeper than she had imagined. Her brother would have understood, would have probably made some joke about her being too stubborn to stay dead. Elena checked the Dragunov again, running through her pre-shot checklist even though the shot was still hours away. Rifle secure, magazines loaded, scope adjusted for the distance and elevation, breathing controlled despite the broken ribs. Heart rate steady despite the circumstances. She was ready. The night passed slowly. Elena dozed in shifts, never sleeping deeply enough to lose awareness of her surroundings. She ate another field ration that tasted like salted cardboard. She changed the bandage on her leg, pleased to see the wound was healing cleanly. As the sun began to rise on the day of the deal, Elena heard vehicles approaching from the east. Too early for Brennan. This was someone else. She put her eye to the scope and watched as 3 vehicles rolled into the valley. The same Toyota Hilux trucks from before. The same Afghan warlord with a heavy black beard. His men spread out, taking security positions, clearly expecting another transaction. Elena checked her phone battery. 12%. She turned on the camera and began recording, narrating quietly. 0:17 hours. Afghan militia forces arriving at coordinates November Papa, Force Event 3. Approximately 15 armed personnel. Awaiting arrival of U.S. military personnel for illegal weapons transaction. She kept the camera running, capturing wide shots of the valley and close shots of the warlord's face. Evidence that could not be disputed. At 07:45, she heard the distinctive sound of American military vehicles. A convoy of 3 Humvees rolled into the valley from the west. Elena's breath caught. Major Brennan was in the lead vehicle, but he was not alone. 2 other American officers climbed out with him. One was Captain Marcus Webb, the intelligence officer she had seen in the valley before. The other was someone new. Elena zoomed in with her scope and felt her blood turn to ice. Lieutenant Colonel Saracen, the battalion executive officer, second in command of the entire battalion. The conspiracy went higher than she thought. Much higher. Elena kept recording as the officers approached the warlord. As they shook hands, as Brennan's men began unloading crates from the Humvees. Crates marked with U.S. military stenciling. Crates that should have been in an armory, not being sold to enemy forces. The warlord's men inspected the weapons. M4 rifles, M249 light machine guns, crates of ammunition, night vision equipment, enough firepower to outfit a small army. And then the warlord handed Brennan a briefcase. Brennan opened it, checked the contents, nodded his satisfaction. Cash, American dollars, probably hundreds of thousands. Elena had it all on video. Faces, weapons, money, proof that could not be denied. She was lining up a close shot of the briefcase where she heard a sound behind her. A rock shifting, boot on stone. Elena spun, reaching for her sidearm, but she was too slow. A figure emerged from behind a boulder, rifle pointed directly at her head. Staff Sergeant Martinez. He had come 12 hours early. Elena froze, her hand on her pistol grip, but not drawing. Martinez's expression was unreadable, his weapon steady. "Do not move, Voss," he said quietly. "Just stay very still." Elena's mind raced. Had she been wrong? Had Brennan gotten to him? Was this how it ended? Betrayed by the one person she had trusted? Martinez took 2 steps closer, his rifle still aimed at her center mass. Then he spoke again, his voice barely a whisper. "There are 3 of Brennan's men moving up the ridge behind you. They have been tracking you since yesterday. I spotted them 2 clicks back and moved ahead to warn you. We have maybe 60 seconds before they get here." Elena's relief was followed immediately by tactical calculation. 3 hostiles, unknown weapons and training. She had broken ribs, a bad leg, and a rifle not designed for close quarters. "Can you walk?" Martinez asked. "If I have to," Elena said. "Then we move. Now, leave the rifle. Take the phone." "But the deal," Elena started, "is happening whether we are here or not. You already have the video. We live to deliver it, or we die here, and the evidence dies with us." "Your call." Elena grabbed her phone, checked that the video was saved, and shoved it into her vest. She left the Dragunov where it lay and followed Martinez as he moved quickly along the ridge, using the terrain to mask their movement. Behind them, she heard voices, Brennan's men reaching her abandoned position, shouting when they found it empty. Martinez led her to a crevice between 2 massive boulders. They wedged themselves inside just as the first shots rang out. Bullets sparked off rock above their heads. "How many rounds do you have?" Martinez asked. 3 magazines for my pistol," Elena said. "You?" 5 for the rifle. 2 for sidearm." He looked at her, and his expression was grim. "This is not how I planned this reunion going." "You and me both," Elena said. More shots. Closer now. The 3 men were spreading out, trying to flank their position. Martinez keyed his radio. Any station, this is Staff Sergeant Martinez. Troops in contact. Grid November Papa, Force Event 328. Request immediate QRF." The radio crackled with static. Then a voice Elena recognized. Colonel Ren. Martinez, what the hell are you doing out there? You're not on any patrol manifest. Sir, I have Staff Sergeant Voss with me. She is alive. Major Brennan attempted to kill her. We have evidence of weapons trafficking involving senior battalion personnel. We are under fire from hostile forces. There was a long pause. Then, say again? Voss is dead. We buried her yesterday. Negative, sir. She is alive, and I am looking at her right now. Major Brennan is in the valley below us, conducting an illegal weapons sale. We have video evidence, but we need extraction immediately. Another pause, longer this time. Then Colonel Raines's voice came back. It was hard as steel. QRF is inbound. ETA, 15 minutes. Keep this frequency open. And Martinez, if you are lying to me, you will spend the rest of your life in Leavenworth. Not lying, sir, Martinez said. Sending coordinates now. He looked at Elena. 15 minutes. Think we can last that long? Elena checked her pistol, press-checked the chamber, and gave him a grim smile. I fell 800 feet and lived. I think I can manage 15 minutes. 15 minutes felt like 15 hours when people were actively trying to kill you. Elena and Martinez were wedged into the crevice between boulders, their backs pressed against cold stone, weapons trained on the approaches. Brennan's men were moving methodically, using fire and maneuver tactics that marked them as trained operators. Not regular soldiers. These were specialists. The first one appeared at the edge of a rock outcropping 40 meters away. Elena recognized him from the helicopter. One of the two men Brennan had kept aboard when he ordered everyone else off. The man's rifle swept across the terrain, searching for targets. Martinez fired first. 3 controlled shots that forced the man back into cover. Return fire came immediately, rounds sparking off the boulders around them, fragments of rock stinging Elena's face. How much time? Elena asked. 12 minutes, Martinez said. He changed magazines smoothly, never taking his eyes off the approaches. They're going to try to rush us before QRF arrives. They cannot afford to let us live. Elena shifted position slightly, trying to find an angle where she could engage without exposing herself to the other 2 shooters. Her broken ribs screamed in protest, but she forced the pain into a box in the back of her mind. Pain later. Survival now. A grenade arced through the air and landed 15 feet from their position. Martinez saw it first and shoved Elena deeper into the crevice, throwing himself on top of her as the explosion ripped through the air. The concussion was deafening. Shrapnel peppered the rocks around them. Elena's ears rang like church bells. Martinez rolled off her and immediately returned fire. Blood ran down the side of his face from where a fragment had grazed his temple, but his hands were steady. You good? He shouted over the ringing in Elena's ears. Still breathing, Elena shouted back. She leaned out and fired 3 rounds at movement she caught in her peripheral vision. Missed. Fired again. This time she heard a grunt of pain. Not a kill, but a hit. 10 minutes, Martinez said. The radio crackled. Martinez, this is Raven 6. QRF is 3 minutes out. Can you mark your position? Martinez pulled a smoke grenade from his vest. On my mark, throw red smoke. Elena pulled hers as well. 3, 2, 1, mark. They threw the grenades simultaneously, the red smoke billowing up from their position in thick clouds. Immediately, gunfire intensified. Brennan's men knew exactly where they were now, but so did the QRF. Elena heard it then. The beautiful sound of Black Hawk helicopters incoming fast and low. She risked a glance up and saw 2 of them cresting the ridgeline, door gunners already engaging targets below. The M240 machine guns opened up with a sound like the world tearing apart. Brennan's men tried to return fire, but you did not win gunfights against door gunners. One of them broke from cover, trying to run. The gunner tracked him and cut him down. The second hostile went to ground, still firing at Elena and Martinez's position. Martinez leaned out to engage and took a round through the shoulder. He spun back into cover, his rifle clattering to the ground. Martinez, Elena grabbed him, pressing her hand against the wound. The bullet had gone clean through, missing bone but tearing muscle. I am okay, Martinez grunted. Get the bastard. Elena picked up his rifle, checked the chamber, and moved to the edge of their cover. The hostile was 40 meters out, pinned between the helicopter's gun runs, but still dangerous. She could see his muzzle flash as he fired at the circling aircraft. Elena settled the rifle's stock against her shoulder, ignored the grinding pain of her broken ribs, and put the red dot on the hostile's center mass. She controlled her breathing, squeezed the trigger smoothly. The rifle bucked. The hostile dropped. The helicopters circled once more, the door gunner scanning for additional threats. Then one of them came into land while the other maintained overwatch. 6 soldiers fast-stroked down before the skids even touched the ground. They moved in perfect formation, weapons up, securing the perimeter. Their team leader, a captain Elena did not recognize, sprinted to their position. "Staff Sergeant Voss?" he asked, looking at her like he was seeing a ghost. "That is me," Elena said. "Ma'am, you're supposed to be dead." "I have heard that a lot lately," Elena said. She helped Martinez to his feet. "We have wounded, and we have evidence that needs to get to Colonel Rains immediately." The captain looked down the valley where Brennan's convoy was now scattering, vehicles racing away in different directions. "Sir, should we pursue?" "Negative," Elena said. "Let them run. The evidence is more important than the arrest. We get it to the colonel and let the system do its job." The medic was already working on Martinez, packing the shoulder wound and starting at 4. Elena let them load him onto the helicopter first, then climbed aboard herself. Her legs nearly gave out as the adrenaline started to fade, but hands caught her, lifted her into the aircraft. As the Black Hawk lifted off, Elena looked down at the valley. She could see the Dragunov still lying in her abandoned hide site. Could see the smoke from the firefight drifting across the rocks. Could see the spot where she had fallen 800 feet 6 days ago. She had survived that fall. Had survived broken bones and starvation and a manhunt. Had survived 3 of Brennan's killers trying to silence her. Now came the hard part, making sure the evidence mattered. The flight back to the forward operating base took 20 minutes. Elena spent it watching Martinez, making sure he stayed conscious, making sure the medic kept pressure on the wound. He had saved her life twice now. First by warning her about Brennan's men, then by calling in the QRF. "You did not have to come," Elena said. Martinez looked at her with eyes that were starting to glaze from the pain medication. "Yes, I did," he said. "I saw what happened on that helicopter. Saw Brennan's face when he thought you were dead. That was not grief. That was relief. I knew something was wrong. You could have ignored it. Could have stayed safe. Could have," Martinez agreed. "But then I would have had to live with myself." His eyes closed. That is not a life worth living. The helicopter touched down on the main helipad. A full security detail was waiting, weapons ready, faces grim. Colonel Rains stood at the center, his expression unreadable. As soon as Elena stepped off the helicopter, 2 military police officers moved forward. For a moment, she thought they were there to arrest her. Instead, they formed up as an escort. "Sergeant Voss," Colonel Rains said. His voice was carefully neutral. "I need to see this evidence." Now, Elena pulled the phone from her vest and handed it to him. The battery was at 8%, but the video was still there. Rains watched it in silence, his face growing darker with each passing second. When it finished, he looked up at Elena. "How many people have seen this?" "Just me and Martinez," Elena said. "And now you, sir." Rains turned to his aide. "Give me General Morrison on secure comms immediately. Then I want every officer named in this video placed under immediate arrest. No warnings. No dilas. Move now." He turned back to Elena. "You look like hell, Sergeant." "I fell out of helicopter, sir." Elena allowed herself a slight smile. "It ruins your complexion." Rains almost smiled back. "Almost. Get to the aid station. Get checked out. Do not talk to anyone about what you saw until Jag gets here. Understood?" "Understood, sir." As the MPs escorted her toward the medical facility, Elena saw commotion near the motor pool. Humvees were being mobilized. Quick reaction forces gearing up for rapid deployment. Colonel Rains was not wasting time. In the aid station, a doctor who looked too young to be out of medical school examined her with increasing disbelief. "You have 3 broken ribs, a partially healed, dislocated shoulder, a deep laceration on your right leg that should have been stitched a week ago, multiple contusions, and what looks like a mild concussion. He said, "How are you even walking?" "Practice," Elena said. The doctor shook his head. "I am admitting you for observation. You need fluids, antibiotics, and about 48 hours of sleep." Later, Elena said, "Right now I need to be available for debriefing. Ma'am, with all due respect, you are not going anywhere until I clear you." Elena was about to argue when Martinez was wheeled in on a gurney. The medics had him stabilized, but he was pale from blood loss. "How is he?" Elena asked. "He will live," the doctor said. "The shoulder will need surgery to repair the muscle damage, but there is no permanent injury." Martinez opened his eyes and looked at Elena. "Did they get him? Did they get Brennan?" "Not yet," Elena said. "But they will." She squeezed his hand. "You did good, Martinez. You saved my life." "Just returning the favor," Martinez said. His eyes drifted closed again. "Someone had to prove you were not crazy." The next hour passed in a blur of medical procedures and official questions. A JAG officer arrived and took Elena's statement, recording every word. An investigator from CID showed up and confiscated her phone as evidence. Colonel Rains returned with an update. "We have Webb and Chun in custody," he said. "But Brennan got away. He left the valley before we could intercept him. We have all routes out of the province locked down, but he had a head start." Elena felt a cold knot form in her stomach. "He is running. And he knows you are alive now," Rains said, "which means you are still in danger. I'm putting you under protective custody until we have him in cuffs." "Sir," Elena said carefully, "he is not going to just disappear. He has too much invested in this operation. Too many people who can testify against him. He is going to try to cover his tracks. By killing witnesses," Rains said flatly. "By killing everyone who can connect him to the conspiracy," Elena confirmed. "Starting with the Afghan warlord he was selling to." Rains considered that. "You think he will go back to finish the job?" "I think he is desperate," Elena said. "And desperate men do stupid things. If I were him, I would eliminate the foreign connection first. Make it look like a military operation. Claim credit for taking out an enemy arms dealer." Rains pulled out his radio. "Give me air surveillance over grid November Papa Force Event 3. I want eyes on that valley and everything within 10 clicks. If Brennan shows up, I want to know about it." He looked back at Elena. "You should rest. Let us handle this." "Sir," Elena said, "I did not survive the last 6 days just to sit in a hospital bed while Brennan slips away. I know how he thinks. I know his patterns. And I owe it to every soldier he betrayed to see this through." Rains studied her for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. "Get some fluids in you. Get those ribs wrapped properly. Then you can assist with the tactical planning. But Voss, if you pass out from exhaustion, I'm having you sedated. Clear?" "Crystal, sir," Elena said. As the doctor started in 4 and began wrapping her ribs, Elena closed her eyes and let herself feel, just for a moment, the weight of everything that had happened. She had fallen 800 feet and lived. Had spent 6 days presumed dead. Had gathered evidence that would destroy a conspiracy reaching into the highest levels of her battalion. But Brennan was still out there. Still dangerous. Still capable of killing more people to protect his secrets. The fight was not over yet. Elena was reviewing aerial surveillance footage when the alarm went up. She had been in the Tactical Operations Center for 3 hours, her ribs wrapped tight, and 4 still taped to her arm, studying every frame of drone video from the valley and surrounding area. Colonel Rains had given her access to everything, and what she saw confirmed her worst fears. Brennan was not running. He was hunting. The alarm was 3 short bursts on the base siren. Incoming aircraft. Unauthorized. Colonel Rains burst into the operations center, his face grim. "We have a Chinook inbound from the northwest. Not on any flight plan. Not responding to radio calls. ETA 4 minutes." Elena felt ice run through her veins. "That is him. He is coming back." "For what?" Rains demanded. "He has to know we are looking for him. Coming here is suicide." "He is coming for the evidence," Elena said. "The phone is here. Webb and Chin are here. Everyone who can testify against him is on this base. If he destroys it all, it is his word against ours." Rains grabbed the radio. All units, weapons free on unauthorized aircraft. I repeat, weapons free. Shoot to disable if possible. Shoot to kill if necessary. Through the Operation Center windows, Elena could see soldiers scrambling to defensive positions. The base's anti-aircraft capability was limited, but they had enough small arms and machine guns to bring down a helicopter if they had to. The Chinook appeared over the western ridge, flying fast and low. It was not displaying any identification markings. The cargo bay doors were open, and Elena could see figures inside. "Sir," one of the radio operators called out. "The pilot is broadcasting on guard frequency. Says he has 4 hostages aboard. American civilians. Says if we fire, he will execute them." Raines swore. Where did he get American civilians? Elena's blood went cold. The contractors. There was a civilian construction team working on expanding the base perimeter. 20 people, mostly American engineers and project managers. The helicopters circled the base once, staying just outside effective range of the small arms. Then Brennan's voice came over the loudspeaker, amplified by the helicopter's external comms. "Colonel Raines, I know you can hear me. I have 4 of your civilian contractors. Engineers. Good people with families back home. I do not want to hurt them, but I will if you force my hand." Raines keyed the radio. "Brennan, this is over. We have your co-conspirators in custody. We have video evidence. Surrender now, and no one else has to die." There was a pause. Then Brennan spoke again, his voice almost conversational. "Elena, I know you were listening. I should have made sure you were dead. That was my mistake. But I can still make this right. You have a phone with video on it. I want that phone. In exchange, I release the hostages and disappear. You never see me again. Elena Grabid a radio. You murdered me, Brennan. Threw me out of a helicopter like I was garbage. And you think I'm going to bargain with you? I think you care about innocent lives more than you care about revenge," Brennan said. "These 4 people have nothing to do with our conflict. Let them go home to their families. Give me the phone and I vanish. Everyone wins. Except justice," Elena said. "Justice is whatever story people believe," Brennan replied. "Right now, you have a choice. For innocent lives or one corrupt officer's punishment. Choose wisely." Raines muted the radio and turned to Elena. "He is bluffing. He will not kill civilians. Too many witnesses aboard that helicopter. He killed me in front of witnesses," Elena said quietly. "Or tried to. He is desperate, sir. Desperate enough to do anything." The helicopter descended to 200 feet, hovering over an open area near the base perimeter. The cargo ramp lowered, and Elena could see 4 people bound and on their knees, 2 men and 2 women in civilian clothes. Behind them stood Brennan, a pistol in his hand. "1 minute," Brennan called out. "Then I start making examples." Raines looked at Elena. "What do you want to do?" Elena's mind raced. The phone was in an evidence locker. Even if she gave it to Brennan, there were backup copies of the video on the base servers. But Brennan did not know that. He thought destroying the original would be enough. "Give me a radio and a vehicle," Elena said. "I will take him a phone." "Absolutely not," Raines said. "You're not going out there alone." "He wants me specifically," Elena said. "This whole thing started because I saw something I should not have. Let me finish it. And if he kills you the moment you hand over the phone?" Elena picked up her sidearm from the table where the doctor had made her leave it. "Then he will have killed a dead woman twice. But at least 4 innocent people go home." Raines studied her face for a long moment. "You have a plan?" "The beginnings of one," Elena said. "But I need you to trust me." 30 seconds, Brennan's voice echoed across the base. Raines handed her a radio. "You have 1 shot at this, Voss. Make it count." Elena grabbed the evidence bag containing her phone and headed for the motor pool. Every step sent pain through her broken ribs, but she forced herself to move quickly. She commandeered a Humvee and drove toward the open area where Brennan's helicopter hovered. As she approached, she keyed the radio. "Brennan, I am coming. Do not hurt them." "Smart choice, Elena," Brennan replied. "Drive to the center of the clearing. Alone. Hands visible." Elena did as instructed, parking the Humvee 50 meters from the helicopter. The rotor wash was intense, kicking up dust and debris. She climbed out slowly, holding the evidence bag in her left hand, her right hand empty and raised. Brennan was silhouetted against the helicopter's interior lights, his pistol pointed at the nearest hostage's head. The other three knelt beside her, their faces streaked with tears and terror. "Toss the bag onto the ramp," Brennan shouted over the rotor noise. "Then step back." Elena walked forward, fighting against the wind. When she was 10 feet from the ramp, she tossed the bag. It landed at Brennan's feet. He bent down and picked it up, keeping his gun trained on the hostages. He pulled out the phone and checked it, confirming the video was still there. Then he smiled. "You always were too predictable, Elena. Too concerned with doing the right thing. It makes you weak." "Maybe," Elena said, "but also made me careful." Brennan's smile faltered. "What does that mean?" "It means the video you're holding is not the only copy," Elena said. "Colonel Rains uploaded it to Division Headquarters 2 hours ago. CID has it. Jack has it. Probably half the Pentagon has it by now. You killing me changes nothing." Brennan's face went white with rage. "You are lying." Elena pulled a second phone from her vest pocket, the one she had taken from Captain Webb during the firefight in the mountains. "Want to see the timestamp on the upload confirmation?" Brennan's gun swung from the hostage to Elena. "If I'm going down, you're coming with me." "Probably," Elena said, "but those 4 people behind you do not deserve to die for your mistakes. Let them go. This is between us." For a long moment, Brennan did not move. Then he laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. "You really think you are the hero of this story? You're nothing. A sniper who got lucky. You survived a fall that should have killed you, and now you think that makes you special." "I think it makes me stubborn," Elena said. "And I think you underestimated how much damage a stubborn person can do when you try to erase them." Brennan raised his pistol, pointing it directly at Elena's chest. "Last words?" Elena thought of her brother, of all the soldiers who had died because people like Brennan put profit before duty, of Martinez lying in the aid station with a bullet wound he had taken protecting her. "Yeah," Elena said. "You should have made sure I was dead." Brennan's finger tightened on the trigger. The sniper shot took him in the right shoulder, spinning him around. The pistol flew from his hand and clattered across the helicopter ramp. Brennan stumbled, clutching his shoulder, blood streaming between his fingers. Elena did not hesitate. She sprinted forward, grabbed the pistol, and aimed it at Brennan's head. Behind her, she could see the sniper's high position on the operations center roof. Martinez, one-armed and supposed to be in surgery, was lowering his rifle. "It is over," Brennan, Elena said. "You are done." Brennan sagged against the helicopter's bulkhead, his face twisted with pain and rage. "You ruined everything. Years of planning. Millions of dollars. All because you could not mind your own business. It became my business when you threw me out of a helicopter," Elena said. She keyed her radio. "Colonel, hostages are secure. Brennan is wounded and contained. Send the MPs." Within seconds, military police vehicles swarmed the clearing. Soldiers secured the hostages and placed Brennan in restraints. Medics arrived to treat his shoulder wound. As they loaded him into an ambulance, Brennan looked at Elena one last time. "This is not over. I have friends, people with power. They will bury you and everything you think you proved." "Maybe," Elena said, "but I buried you first." Colonel Rains approached as the ambulance drove away. "That was reckless, Sergeant. He could have killed you." "He was going to kill me anyway," Elena said. "At least this way, I controlled the situation." "And the phone you gave him?" "Decoy. Just a cheap burner with a looped video file. The real evidence never left your secure server." Rains allowed himself a small smile. "Remind me never to play poker with you, Voss." Elena looked at the 4 hostages being checked by medics. They were scared but alive. Safe because she had taken a risk. That was what mattered. She turned to see Martinez being helped down from the operations center roof by 2 soldiers. He should have been in surgery, but he had refused until he knew Elena was safe. "You were supposed to be getting your shoulder repaired," Elena called out. "Could not let you have all the fun," Martinez called back. Besides, somebody had to watch her back. Elena felt something warm bloom in her chest. For 6 days, she had been alone, had survived through sheer determination and stubbornness. But in the end, she had not been alone. Martinez had risked everything to help her. Colonel Rains had believed her evidence. The system she had almost given up on had worked. Almost. As the sun set over the Afghan mountains, Elena sat in the operations center and watched as the formal arrest reports were filed. Brennan would face a general court-martial. Webb and Chun were already cooperating with investigators, providing names of other officers involved in the conspiracy. The net was widening. More arrests would come. Some would escape. Some would cut deals. But the core of the operation was broken. And Elena Voss, who had been officially dead for a week, was very much alive to see it through. Colonel Rains approached with a satellite phone. "Your family has been notified that you are alive. Your mother wants to talk to you." Elena took the phone with shaking hands. "Mom?" Her mother's voice came through, choked with tears and relief and joy. "Elena? Baby, they said you were dead. They said you fell. Oh God, Elena, I thought I had lost you." "I am okay, Mom," Elena said, tears streaming down her own face. "I am okay. I am coming home soon." As she talked to her mother, explaining what she could without revealing classified details, Elena looked out at the mountains where she had fallen, where she had survived, where she had fought back against impossible odds. She had been thrown away like garbage, left for dead by a man who thought power made him untouchable. But Elena Voss had proved something that Brennan never understood. You could throw someone out of a helicopter. You could bury them and write their obituary and move on with your crimes. But if they survived the fall, if they crawled out of the wreckage with evidence and determination and nothing left to lose, they became something far more dangerous than a soldier following orders. They became a reckoning. The court-martial of Major Kyle Brennan began 3 weeks later at Fort Bragg, North Carolina. Elena sat in the witness gallery wearing her dress uniform, the ribbon rack on her chest now, including a Purple Heart for wounds received in combat. The doctors had cleared her for travel, but restricted her to light duty. Her ribs were healing, the leg wound had closed cleanly, and the shoulder was regaining full range of motion. Physically, she was recovering. The other wounds would take longer. The courtroom was packed. Military lawyers in crisp uniforms. JAG officers with briefcases full of evidence. News media representatives cordoned off in a separate section, their cameras trained on the defendant's table. And at that table sat Major Kyle Brennan, wearing his service dress uniform stripped of all insignia and rank. His attorney, a civilian lawyer with a reputation for defending impossible cases, sat beside him taking notes. Brennan looked smaller than Elena remembered, less imposing, without the authority of his rank, without the power he had wielded so carelessly. He was just a man facing the consequences of his choices. Their eyes met across the courtroom. Brennan's expression was cold, calculating. Elena stared back without flinching. She had fallen 800 feet because of him, had spent 6 days presumed dead, had fought her way back from the edge of death itself. She was not afraid of him anymore. "All rise," the bailiff announced. The military judge entered, a full colonel with 30 years of service and a reputation for being absolutely intractable when it came to military law. The charges were read aloud. Conspiracy to commit treason, trafficking in military weapons, attempted murder of a subordinate, corruption of office, theft of government property. The list went on for 5 full minutes. Brennan stood at attention throughout, his face carefully neutral. When asked how he pleaded, his voice was steady. "Not guilty, Your Honor. These charges are fabricated by a subordinate with a history of insubordination and mental instability." His lawyer immediately moved to introduce evidence of Elena's supposed psychological issues. Reports of her questioning orders, her isolation from other soldiers, her obsession with her brother's death. The prosecution countered with the video evidence. 23 minutes of high-definition footage showing Brennan conducting weapons deals with Afghan militia forces. His face clearly visible, his voice clearly audible. The serial numbers on the weapons crates clearly documented. The defense argued the video was doctored, claimed it was impossible for Elena to have filmed it given she was supposed to be on the helicopter with Brennan at the time, suggested the entire narrative was an elaborate fabrication by a disturbed soldier seeking revenge for perceived slights. Then the prosecution called its first witness, Captain Marcus Webb, Webb took the stand looking like a man who had aged 10 years in 3 weeks. He had accepted a plea deal in exchange for testimony. 20 years in military prison instead of life. He would be eligible for parole in 12. Webb testified about the conspiracy in clinical detail. How Brennan had recruited him 2 years earlier. How they had systematically diverted weapons from armories, falsified inventory reports, and used classified helicopter missions to conduct the transactions. How the money had been split among 5 officers, with Brennan taking the largest share. And he testified about Elena. Major Brennan was furious when Sergeant Voss witnessed the transaction. Webb said, his voice quiet but clear. He said she was a problem that needed to be eliminated. He planned the helicopter extraction specifically to get her alone in the air, where there would be no witnesses except his handpicked crew. The defense attorney stood. Objection. This is hearsay and speculation. The judge looked at Webb. Did Major Brennan specifically state his intention to kill Sergeant Voss? Yes, Your Honor, Webb said. He told me and Lieutenant Colonel Chan that Voss was, quote, too dangerous to let live. He said accidents happen in combat zones. He said no one would question a training fatality during helicopter operations. The courtroom erupted in murmurs. The judge gavelled for silence. The prosecution called its next witness. Staff Sergeant Daniel Martinez. Martinez walked to the stand with his arm still in a sling from the shoulder surgery. He testified about finding Elena's coded message, about believing she was alive when everyone else thought she was dead, about tracking her to the mountains and helping her survive Brennan's kill team. Most importantly, he testified about what he had witnessed on the helicopter. I saw Major Brennan and Sergeant Voss struggle at the cargo door, Martinez said. I saw the major deliberately release his grip on her vest. I saw her fall. It was not an accident. It was not suicide. It was murder. The defense tried to shake his testimony, suggested his view had been obstructed, implied he was romantically involved with Elena and biased in her favor. Martinez remained calm through it all. I know what I saw. He said simply, Major Brennan murdered a soldier under his command because she witnessed his crimes. Everything else is just noise. On the 4th day of the trial, Elena was called to testify. She walked to the stand with her back straight, her movements precise despite the lingering pain. She placed her hand on the Bible and swore to tell the truth. The prosecution led her through her testimony methodically. The initial observation of the weapons deal, her attempt to document it, Brennan's reaction when he realized she had seen him, the helicopter confrontation, the fall. Describe what happened when you hit the cliff face, the prosecutor said. Elena closed her eyes, remembering. I impacted on my left side at approximately terminal velocity. The force broke 3 ribs and tore my shoulder from its socket. I tumbled down the rocky slope, hitting multiple outcroppings. Each impact slowed my descent slightly. Eventually, I landed on a narrow ledge instead of continuing to the valley floor. I should have died. The fact that I survived was pure chance. And what did you do after regaining consciousness? I assessed my injuries, treated what I could, and found shelter in a cave system. I discovered a Soviet weapons cache and used the equipment to surveil Major Brennan's continued criminal activities. I documented his second weapons transaction and transmitted evidence to proper authorities. The defense attorney rose for cross-examination. He was aggressive, accusatory, tried to paint Elena as unstable and vindictive. Sergeant Voss, is it not true that you have a history of questioning your superior officers? I have a history of ensuring missions are conducted safely and legally, Elena replied. Is it not true that you blame the Army for your brother's death and harbor resentment toward the institution? I blame specific officers who cut safety corners that resulted in my brother's death. Officers like Major Brennan who put personal gain above the welfare of soldiers under their command. The attorney moved closer. Is it not possible that you fabricated this entire scenario as revenge? That you created false evidence to destroy a superior officer's career? Elena met his eyes steadily. Sir, I have 3 broken ribs that are still healing. I have a scar on my leg that will never fully fade. I have spent the last month in debriefings and depositions, reliving the worst experience of my life. If I wanted revenge, I would have simply shot Major Brennan from 800 meters away and disappeared into the mountains. Instead, I gathered evidence and trusted the system to deliver justice. That is not revenge. That is duty. The courtroom was silent. The defense attorney had no response. The trial lasted 2 weeks. 38 witnesses testified. Hundreds of pieces of evidence were entered into the record. The defense fought every charge, challenged every assertion, questioned every motive. But the evidence was overwhelming. The video showed what it showed. The financial records told their story. The witnesses corroborated each other. On a Friday afternoon in late October, the military jury returned their verdict. Guilty on all counts. Brennan showed no reaction as the verdict was read. He stood at attention, his face a mask, as the judge prepared to deliver the sentence. Major Kyle Brennan, the judge said, "You have been found guilty of crimes that strike at the very heart of military service. You betrayed your oath. You endangered soldiers under your command. You sold weapons to our enemies for personal profit. And when confronted with your crimes, you attempted to murder a decorated soldier who had done nothing wrong except witness your corruption." The judge paused, looking directly at Brennan. "This court sentences you to life imprisonment at the United States Disciplinary Barracks, Fort Leavenworth. You will be dishonorably discharged from the United States Army. All pay, benefits, and privileges are hereby revoked. You will never wear the uniform again." Brennan was led away in handcuffs. As he passed Elena's seat, he stopped and looked at her one final time. "You destroyed my life," he said quietly. "No, Elena replied. "You did that yourself. I just made sure everyone knew about it." After the sentencing, Elena stood outside the courthouse with Martinez and Colonel Rains. The media swarmed around them, shouting questions, demanding statements. Rains handled the press while Elena and Martinez slipped away to a quiet area behind the building. "How are you holding up?" Martinez asked. Elena considered the question. A month ago, she had been legally dead, had been broken and bleeding in a cave with nothing but a stolen rifle and fading hope. Now Brennan was going to prison for the rest of his life. Webb and Chun had accepted their plea deals. The conspiracy had been exposed and dismantled. "I'm still standing," Elena said. "That count for something." Martinez smiled. "You did more than stand, boss. You survived a fall that should have killed you, fought off a kill team with broken ribs, and took down a criminal conspiracy that reached the battalion command level. That is not just surviving. That is winning." Elena thought about her brother, about all the soldiers who had died because people like Brennan had put profit before duty. Justice for them was incomplete. Brennan in prison did not bring them back, did not undo the damage. But it was something. It was accountability. It was a statement that corruption would not be tolerated, that soldiers who did the right thing would be protected, that the system could work if people were willing to fight for it. "What are you going to do now?" Martinez asked. "Back to active duty?" Elena shook her head. The Army had offered her a medical discharge with full benefits. After everything she had been through, no one would blame her for taking it. But that felt too much like quitting. "I'm staying in," Elena said. "Requested transfer to the training command. If I'm going to keep doing this job, I want to make sure the next generation of soldiers knows how to spot the Brennans before they can do damage." Martinez nodded approvingly. "They will be lucky to have you. What about you? Your shoulder?" "Healing. I will be back to full duty in 6 months." Martinez paused. "I put in for sniper school. Figured if I'm going to keep ending up in situations where I need to make impossible shots, I should probably get proper training." Elena laughed, the sound surprising her. It felt good to laugh. Felt like maybe healing was possible after all. They walked back to join Colonel Rains and the official statements and the carefully managed media response. The story would be news for a few weeks, then fade into the background as other scandals and crises took its place. But Elena knew she would never forget the feeling of falling through empty air, the pain of broken bones, the loneliness of that cave, the determination that had kept her moving when every rational thought said to quit. She had been thrown away, discarded, left for dead. But she had climbed back from a void carrying truth and evidence and an absolute refusal to let evil win. Brennan had tried to erase her. Instead, he had created something he could never control. He had created a survivor, a witness, a soldier who knew exactly how much she could endure and refused to break. And that, Elena thought as the sun set over Fort Bragg, was a kind of victory that no court-martial verdict could fully capture. She had fallen 800 feet and lived to tell the story. Everything else was just details. The ceremony took place on a cold November morning at Fort Benning, Georgia. Elena stood at attention in her dress uniform, the wind cutting through the fabric despite the heavy coat draped over her shoulders. In front of her, a reviewing stand held 3 generals, a dozen senior officers, and her family seated in the place of honor. Her mother sat in the front row wearing her best dress, the one she saved for church and special occasions. Her father beside her in the suit he had worn to Elena's brother's funeral 6 years ago. They had flown in from Ohio the night before, and Elena had spent 2 hours with them in the hotel, trying to explain everything that had happened while leaving out the parts that would give her mother nightmares. The base commander, a 2-star general named Patricia Morrison, stepped to the microphone. Her voice carried across the parade ground, amplified by speakers. "We are gathered here today to honor extraordinary service and courage under the most difficult circumstances imaginable. Staff Sergeant Elena Voss exemplifies the finest traditions of the United States Army. When confronted with corruption and evil, she did not look away. When targeted for elimination, she did not surrender. When left for dead, she refused to die." Elena kept her eyes forward, her face neutral, but inside she felt the weight of every word. The official narrative had been sanitized for public consumption. A decorated soldier discovers criminal activity. She is targeted by corrupt officers. She survives an attempted murder and gathers evidence that exposes a conspiracy. The story was true as far as it went, but it did not capture the feeling of falling through empty air, did not convey the grinding agony of setting her own dislocated shoulder in a dark cave, did not explain the cold certainty that she would die alone in those mountains with no one ever knowing the truth. For her actions, General Morrison continued, Staff Sergeant Voss is awarded the Soldier's Medal for heroism not involving actual conflict with an enemy. Additionally, she is awarded the Army Commendation Medal with Valor Device for her actions in exposing criminal activity at great personal risk. An aide stepped forward, carrying the medals on a presentation tray. General Morrison pinned them to Elena's uniform with practiced precision. Then she stepped back and saluted. The assembled soldiers returned the salute. Elena's parents stood, tears streaming down both their faces. After the ceremony, there was a reception in the officers' club. Elena shook hands with what felt like 100 people. Senators who wanted to be associated with her story. Military brass, ensuring their photos made it to the right publications. Fellow soldiers who looked at her with something between awe and disbelief. Martinez appeared at her elbow, his arm now free of the sling. He had been medically cleared for full duty the week before and immediately put in his application for sniper school. "You look exhausted," he said quietly. "I am," Elena admitted. "How many more people do I have to smile at before I can leave?" "At least another hour. You are the guest of honor." Martinez handed her a glass of water. "Pace yourself." Elena took the water gratefully. Across the room, she could see her parents talking with Colonel Rains. Her mother was crying again, thanking him for saving her daughter's life. Her father stood silently, his hand on his wife's shoulder, his eyes distant. Elena knew that look. He was thinking about their son, about the other child they had lost to the Army's failures. She excused herself and made her way through the crowd to her parents. Her mother immediately pulled her into a crushing hug, ignoring Elena's slight wince as the pressure hit her still healing ribs. "I am so proud of you," her mother whispered. "So proud and so angry that you had to go through all of that." "I'm okay, Mom," Elena said. "I promise." Her father extended his hand, and Elena shook it. Then he pulled her close, something he rarely did. "Your brother would be proud too," he said quietly. You did what we could not do for him. You made them answer for their crimes. Elena felt tears prick her eyes. Dad, He pulled back and looked at her steadily. You are stronger than you know, Elena. Stronger than your mother and I ever had to be. Do not let them break that strength with ceremonies and medals and politicians who want to use your story. I won't, Elena promised. The reception lasted another 2 hours. By the time Elena escaped to her assigned quarters, she was running on fumes. She collapsed onto the bed, still wearing her dress uniform, too exhausted to change. Her phone buzzed. A text message from an unknown number. Congratulations on the medals. You earned them. This is Webb. Elena stared at the message. Captain Marcus Webb, currently serving year 1 of his 20-year sentence at Fort Leavenworth. He should not have been able to send messages. Should not have had access to her number. She almost deleted it. Almost blocked the number and moved on. But something made her respond. How did you get this number? 3 dots appeared. Then, I still have friends. People who owe me favors. I wanted you to know something. Elena waited. Brennan is not adjusting well to prison. He thought his lawyers would get him a reduced sentence. Thought his connections would protect him. Now he realizes he will die in a cell. He blames you for everything. Elena typed back, I don't care what he thinks. He made his choices. The response came quickly. I know, but I wanted to warn you. He talks about you. A lot. About what he would do if he ever got the chance. Just be careful. Even from prison, people like Brennan can reach out. Elena considered that. Then she typed, Are you trying to help me or scare me? A long pause. Then, maybe both. I made terrible choices. Choices that got people hurt. I thought the money was worth it. Thought no one would ever find out. But you found out. You survived. You won. Webb paused. I guess I wanted you to know that at least one person involved in this mess respects what you did. Even if it cost me everything. Elena read the message twice. Then she typed, You cost yourself everything. I just made sure everyone knew about it. Use your 20 years to become someone better than who you were. The 3 dots appeared and disappeared several times. Finally, I will try. Stay safe, Sergeant Voss. Elena deleted the message thread and blocked the number. She did not need reminders from her past. Did not need warnings about Brennan's bitterness. She knew men like him. Knew they spent their lives blaming others for their failures, never accepting responsibility, never growing beyond their resentments. Let him rot in his anger. She had survived. That was enough. The next morning, Elena met with the training command officers to discuss her new assignment. She would be teaching advanced reconnaissance and tactical observation at the Army Sniper School, training the next generation of snipers to be technically proficient and morally grounded. The officer in charge, a master sergeant with 24 years of service and more combat deployments than Elena could count, looked at her file with approval. You have an unusual background, Voss. Most instructors come to us after completing their operational tours without incident. You come to us having exposed a criminal conspiracy and survived a murder attempt. Elena nodded. Sir, I want to make sure the soldiers I train understand that being a sniper is not just about marksmanship. It is about making ethical decisions under pressure, about knowing when to take the shot and when to gather evidence, about understanding that our real enemy is not just the people downrange, but the corruption and evil that can exist in our own ranks. The master sergeant studied her for a long moment. Then he smiled. You will do well here, Sergeant. When can you start? Elena thought about the past 2 months. The fall, the cave, the pain, the court-martial, the ceremonies. Every moment had been leading to this, to a chance to make sure what happened to her never happened to another soldier. Tomorrow, sir, Elena said. I can start tomorrow. That afternoon, Elena walked the grounds of Fort Benning alone. The same base where her brother had died 6 years ago. The same training facilities. The same jump towers where faulty equipment had sent him plummeting to his death. She found a memorial wall where his name was inscribed among other soldiers who had died during training. Staff Sergeant Jacob Voss. She traced the letters with her fingers. I did it, Jake, she said quietly. I made them pay attention. Made them see that soldiers' lives matter more than money or convenience or career advancement. I know it does not bring you back. Nothing can do that. But maybe it saves the next soldier. Maybe it makes the system a little bit better. The wind rustled through the trees. Elena stood there for a long time, remembering her brother's laugh, his terrible jokes, his absolute conviction that serving in the army was the most honorable thing a person could do. He had believed in the system, had trusted it, and had failed him. But Elena had fought to make it better, had refused to let his death be meaningless, had survived her own murder to expose the kind of corruption that destroyed good soldiers. She pulled out her phone and opened the camera, turned it to selfie mode. She looked tired, older than her 26 years. But she was alive, standing, unbroken. Elena took the photo and sent it to Martinez with a simple message. Still here. Still fighting. Still winning. His response came immediately. Damn right you are. See you at sniper school next month. Elena smiled and pocketed her phone. Then she turned away from the memorial wall and walked toward her new assignment, toward training the next generation, toward making sure they had the skills and the moral foundation to handle whatever the army threw at them. She had been thrown out of a helicopter at 800 feet, had fallen through the sky with nothing but empty air beneath her, had hit the mountain and somehow survived. The fall had broken her body, but not her spirit, had tested her limits and found her stronger than anyone, including herself, had believed possible. Major Kyle Brennan had tried to erase her, had thrown her away like garbage, had celebrated what he thought was her death. But Elena Vos was not so easily erased, not so easily broken, not so easily defeated. She had survived the fall, had crawled out of the darkness, had gathered her evidence and her strength and her absolute refusal to let evil win. And now she stood at Fort Benning, medals on her chest, scars on her body, and a mission that mattered more than any sniper shot she would ever take. She would teach the next generation, would make them better, stronger, more ethical than the soldiers who had come before. She would honor her brother's memory, would make sure his death led to something meaningful, and she would never, ever let anyone throw another soldier away the way Brennan had tried to throw her away. That was her promise, her mission, her reason for surviving the impossible. The wind picked up cold and biting. Elena turned her collar up against it and kept walking. She had fallen 800 feet, but she had landed on her feet, and she was not done fighting yet. 6 months later, Elena stood on the firing range at Fort Benning watching her first class of sniper students complete their final qualification. 20 soldiers lay prone in their firing positions, rifles locked onto targets 800 meters downrange. Elena walked behind them, observing their form, their breathing, their discipline. She saw younger versions of herself in each of them, focused, determined, believing that technical proficiency was enough. They had learned the mechanics, windage, elevation, trigger control, ballistics, but Elena's job was to teach them something more important, something that could not be measured on a scorecard. Ceasefire, she called out. Clear all weapons and stand. The students complied, confusion on their faces. They had only fired half their qualification rounds. Elena walked to the front of the firing line. Behind her, Master Sergeant Torres, the lead instructor, watched with interest. He knew what she was doing. They had discussed this lesson plan a dozen times. You all just made perfect shots on stationary targets in ideal conditions, Elena said. Congratulations. You have mastered the easy part. Now let me tell you about the hard part. She gestured to the targets downrange. Those paper silhouettes do not shoot back. They do not have families waiting for them at home. They do not bleed or scream or beg for their lives. In combat, your targets will be human beings, and some of them will be people you thought you could trust. Private Chun, one of the youngest students, raised her hand tentatively. Sergeant, are you talking about what happened to you in Afghanistan? Elena met her eyes. Yes, Private. I am talking about the day my commanding officer tried to murder me because I witnessed him committing treason. I'm talking about falling 800 feet from a helicopter and somehow surviving. I'm talking about spending 6 days alone in a cave with broken bones, thinking I would die before anyone knew the truth. The range went silent. The students knew her story from news reports and official briefings, but hearing it directly from her was different. The reason I am telling you this, Elena continued, is because being a sniper is not just about making impossible shots. It is about seeing things other people miss. It is about being willing to report what you see, even when it is dangerous. Even when the people committing crimes are the same people who control your career and your life. She walked along the line of students. Some of you will deploy to combat zones. You will see things that do not make sense. Equipment that disappears. Orders that seem wrong. Officers who act suspiciously. When that happens, you have two choices. You can stay quiet and hope it does not affect you, or you can do what is right and accept the consequences. Specialist Morrison, a stocky soldier from Texas, spoke up. But Sergeant, what if doing the right thing gets you killed? Elena stopped in front of him. Then you die knowing you tried. And maybe, if you were as stubborn as I was, you survive long enough to make sure the truth comes out. She resumed walking. I fell 800 feet, hit a cliff face at terminal velocity, broke 3 ribs, dislocated my shoulder, gashed my leg open, and gave myself a concussion. Medical experts said I should have died on impact. But I did not die. Want to know why? The students waited. Because dying meant the bad guys won, Elena said. Because dying meant Major Brennan got away with selling weapons to our enemies. Because dying meant every soldier he betrayed, every life he endangered, every dollar he stole meant nothing. I was too angry to die, too stubborn, too committed to making sure evil faced consequences. She let that sink in. Then she smiled slightly. Also, I got incredibly lucky. Do not count on luck, but do count on determination matching when everything else fails. Master Sergeant Torres stepped forward. Sergeant Voss makes an important point. Technical proficiency is necessary, but not sufficient. Character matters. Ethics matter. Being willing to stand up for what is right, even when it costs you everything, that matters most of all. He looked at the students. Tomorrow you will complete your qualification. Those who pass will be certified as Army snipers. You will carry that designation for the rest of your career. Make sure you carry it with honor. The students were dismissed. As they filed off the range, Private Chun approached Elena hesitantly. Sergeant, can I ask you something personal? Of course, Elena said. How did you deal with the fear? When you were falling, when you were hiding in that cave, when Brennan's men were hunting you. How did you keep going? Elena considered the question carefully. The truth was complicated. Fear had been her constant companion for 6 days. Fear of dying alone. Fear of the evidence being lost. Fear that Brennan would win. I did not stop being afraid, Elena said. Fear is just information. It tells you the stakes are high, that what you are doing matters. I used the fear. Let it sharpen my focus. Let it remind me why I had to survive. What if I freeze? Chen asked quietly. What if I am in that situation and I just cannot do what you did? Elena put her hand on the younger woman's shoulder. Then you do the next smallest thing. You take the next breath. You move to the next position. You survive the next minute. You do not think about falling 800 feet. You think about hitting the cliff. Then you think about finding the ledge. Then you think about reaching the cave. One impossible thing at a time. She nodded slowly. Thank you, Sergeant. After she left, Martinez appeared. He had graduated from sniper school 3 weeks earlier and been assigned as an assistant instructor. His shoulder had healed completely, and he had scored expert on every qualification. That was a good talk, he said, though I'm pretty sure half of them now think you are immortal. Elena loves it. Good. Maybe we'll keep them from doing stupid things that get them killed. They walked together toward the instructor offices. The Georgia sun was brutal, the heat shimmering off the concrete. Elena still had dreams about the Afghan mountains, about the cold cave, about the sound of the helicopter rotors fading away as she lay bleeding on the rocks. But the dreams were less frequent now, less vivid. The scars were fading, physical and emotional. I got an email from Colonel Rains, Martinez said. The investigation is complete. They identified 17 officers involved in Brennan's conspiracy. 11 have been court-martialed. 6 are cooperating with prosecutors for reduced sentences. And Brennan, Elena asked, still at Leavenworth, still blaming you for ruining his life. Martinez paused. Rains also said there have been threats. Anonymous messages sent to the base. Someone claiming they will make you pay for what you did to Brennan. Elena had expected this. Brennan had friends, associates, people who benefited from his criminal enterprise. Some of them were still free, still in positions of power, still angry that their operation had been exposed. "Do they think threats will work?" Elena said. "I survived falling out of a helicopter. I'm not particularly worried about internet tough guys." "Raines is taking it seriously," Martinez said. "He has ordered increased security. Want you to be cautious about your routines. Vary your schedule. Stay aware." Elena nodded. She would be careful, but she would not live in fear, would not let the shadows of Brennan's conspiracy control her life. That evening, Elena video called her parents. They had adjusted to her survival, though her mother still cried sometimes when talking about how close they had come to losing her. "How was the teaching going?" her father asked. "Good," Elena said. "The students are motivated. They want to learn. Some of them have the potential to be exceptional." "Are you taking care of yourself?" her mother asked. "Eating properly? Getting enough sleep?" "Yes, Mom," Elena said, smiling. "I promise." After the call, Elena sat alone in her quarters looking at the medals on her wall. The Soldier's Medal, the Army Commendation Medal with Valor, the Purple Heart. Each one represented a moment of pain, sacrifice, determination. But the thing she was most proud of was not on the wall. It was the letter she had received 2 weeks earlier from the Army's training command. They were implementing new safety protocols based on recommendations from an investigation into training deaths, including her brother's. Equipment would be inspected more rigorously. Safety shortcuts would result in immediate removal from command. Soldiers' lives would be prioritized over budget concerns. It was not everything. It did not bring her brother back, but it meant his death had led to change, had forced the system to be better. Elena pulled out her journal and wrote, something she had started doing in the cave and continued even after her rescue. Writing helped her process, helped her make sense of everything that had happened. 6 months since the fall, she wrote. 6 months since I should have died. Some days I still cannot believe I survived. Other days, survival feels like the most natural thing in the world. Like my body knew how to refuse death, even when my mind had accepted it. She paused, thinking, then continued. The students look at me like I am some kind of hero, like surviving makes me special. But I was just a soldier who saw something wrong and refused to look away. I was just a woman who fell out of a helicopter and decided that hitting the ground would not be the end of her story. Maybe that is enough. Maybe being willing to stand up, to endure, to keep fighting when everything says to quit. Maybe that is what heroism actually is. Not the absence of fear, not superhuman strength, just the stubborn refusal to let evil win. She closed the journal and looked out the window at the Georgia night. Somewhere out there, Brennan sat in a prison cell nursing his hatred. Somewhere, his former associates plotted revenge. Somewhere, new conspiracies were being born, new corruptions taking root. But also somewhere, soldiers were being trained to be vigilant, to be ethical, to understand that their oath meant something more than following orders blindly. And Elena Voss, who had been thrown away and left for dead, was teaching them, was making sure the next generation knew that character mattered more than convenience, that doing right mattered more than doing what was easy. She had survived the fall, had turned her near death into a mission, had refused to let trauma define her. The road ahead was uncertain. Threats remained, dangers lurked, but Elena had learned something fundamental in that Afghan cave with broken bones and fading hope. She had learned that she could endure more than she ever imagined, could survive what should have been impossible, could transform pain into purpose and horror into hope. Tomorrow she would return to the range, would teach another class, would look into the eyes of young soldiers and see the future of the Army she had sworn to serve. And she would make damn sure that future was better than the past that had tried to kill her. Elena turned off the lights and went to bed. As she drifted towards sleep, she thought about the cave, about the cold and the dark and the loneliness. But she also thought about what came after. The sunrise, the rescue, the justice, the new beginning. She had fallen 800 feet, and she had risen from the wreckage stronger than before. That was the story she would tell. That was the lesson she would teach. Fall down 7 times. Stand up 8. No matter how far you fall, You can always choose to rise again. 1 year after the fall, Elena stood at the graduation ceremony for her third sniper class. The students stood at attention on the parade ground, their newly earned sniper badges gleaming in the sunlight. 22 soldiers who had passed every test, mastered every skill, and more importantly, understood the weight of responsibility that came with the designation. Elena walked down the line, shaking each graduate's hand, looking them in the eye. She saw confidence tempered with humility, skill balanced with ethics. Exactly what the Army needed. Private Chun was among the graduates, standing tall and proud. She had struggled with the physical demands early on, but pushed through with determination that reminded Elena of herself. When Elena shook her hand, Chun smiled. "Thank you, Sergeant, for everything you taught us. Just remember it when it matters," Elena said. "When you're deployed and things get complicated. When you see something that does not feel right. Trust your instincts and do what is right, no matter the cost." "I will," Chun promised. "I swear I will." After the ceremony, Elena found Martinez waiting for her near the instructor building. He had news written all over his face. "What happened?" Elena asked. Martinez handed her his phone. On the screen was a news article. The headline read, "Former Army Major Dies in Federal Prison." Elena read quickly. Major Kyle Brennan, convicted of treason and weapons trafficking, had died at the United States Disciplinary Barracks in Fort Leavenworth. The official cause of death was listed as complications from a heart condition. He was 43 years old. "How do you feel?" Martinez asked quietly. Elena thought about it. She searched inside herself for satisfaction, for vindication, for the sense that justice had been completed. But all she felt was a distant sadness. Not for Brennan, but for all the destruction he had caused. All the lives he had ruined. All the trust he had betrayed. "I feel nothing," Elena said finally. "He made his choices. He faced his consequences. His death does not change what he did or what I survived." Martinez nodded. Webb sent another message. Said Brennan never accepted responsibility. Spent his last year blaming everyone but himself. Died angry and bitter. "Then he wasted his final year too," Elena said. She handed the phone back. "Come on. We have a graduation reception to attend." The reception was held in the Officers Club, the same place where Elena had received her medals a year ago. But this time, she was not the center of attention. The graduates were. As it should be, Elena found a quiet corner and watched the celebration. Families hugging their soldiers. Instructors congratulating their students. The next generation stepping forward to carry the burden of service. "Sergeant Voss," a voice called out. She turned to see General Morrison, the same general who had pinned her medals, approaching with another officer. "This is Brigadier General James Holland. He wanted to meet you." The Brigadier General extended his hand. "Sergeant Voss, I have heard remarkable things about your instruction program. The focus on ethics and character development alongside technical training is exactly what the Army needs." "Thank you, sir," Elena said. "In fact," General Holland continued, "we are developing a new training initiative for all combat arms specialties, incorporating ethical decision-making scenarios, accountability frameworks, whistleblower protections. We would like you to help design the curriculum." Elena felt something shift inside her. This was bigger than sniper school. This was Army-wide. This was institutional change. "I would be honored, sir," Elena said. After the generals left, Martinez appeared at her elbow again. "From teaching one class to designing Army-wide curriculum. You're moving up in the world, Voss. Just try to make sure what happened to me never happens to anyone else," Elena said. "Mission accomplished then," Martinez said. He paused. "I got orders today. Deploying to Iraq in 3 months. Providing sniper support for special operations." Elena felt a pang of concern. "Be careful out there." "Always am." Martinez smiled. "Besides, I learned from the best. If things go sideways, I will just refuse to die until I can report what I saw." "That is not actually a strategy," Elena said, but she was smiling too. "Work for you," Martinez pointed out. Later that evening, Elena drove to the memorial wall where her brother's name was inscribed. She came here once a month, always alone, always in the evening when the tourists and visitors had left. She traced Jacob's name with her fingers, the way she always did. "We did it, Jake," she said quietly. "The safety protocols you died for, they are real now. The accountability I fought for, it is becoming standard. The system is changing, slowly, imperfectly, but changing." The wind rustled through the trees. Elena imagined it was her brother's response. Approval. Pride. The knowledge that his death had meaning beyond a folded flag and a gravestone. "I am doing okay," she continued. "Teaching. Making a difference. There's still bad days. Still nightmares about falling. Still moments when I feel the pain of those broken ribs. But mostly I am good. I am whole. I am exactly where I need to be." She stood there for a long time, watching the sun set over Fort Benning. The same sun that had risen over the Afghan mountains while she lay broken in a cave. The same sun that had witnessed her fall and her survival and everything that came after. Elena pulled out her phone and opened the photo app. She scrolled to the video she had recorded in that cave. The one where she stated her name and serial number and promised that if anyone found it, they would know the truth. She had never deleted it, had kept it as a reminder of how close she had come to being erased, how close evil had come to winning. But evil had not won. Truth had won. Justice had won. And Elena Vos, who was supposed to be dead, had won most of all. She opened her camera and switched to selfie mode. Took a photo of herself standing in front of her brother's memorial. She looked older than a year ago, more weathered, but also more at peace. Elena sent a photo to her parents with a simple message at Jake's memorial, telling him about the changes we made. "Love you both." Her mother's response came immediately. "So proud of you, sweetheart. Your brother would be too." As Elena walked back to her car, her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost did not answer, but something made her pick up. "Is this Sergeant Voss?" a woman's voice asked. "Yes, who is this?" "My name is Captain Sarah Mitchell. I am currently deployed in Afghanistan." The voice hesitated. "I witnessed something. Criminal activity involving my commanding officer. I do not know who to trust or what to do. But I heard your story. About what you survived. About how you exposed corruption. I was hoping you could tell me how to do the same thing." Elena stopped walking. Her heart was pounding. Not from fear. From recognition. This was why she had survived. This was the purpose of her pain. "Captain Mitchell," Elena said carefully. "First thing you need to know is that doing the right thing might cost you everything. It might be dangerous. It might ruin your career. Are you prepared for that?" There was a pause. "Then, I saw what happened to you. You fell 800 feet and lived. If you can survive that, I can survive whatever comes from reporting what I saw." Elena smiled. "Okay, here is what you do. First, document everything. Photos, videos, written records. Do not trust anyone in your chain of command until you know who is involved. Second, secure copies of your evidence in multiple locations. Third, contact the Criminal Investigation Division directly, not through your unit." She spent the next 20 minutes walking Captain Mitchell through the process, giving her specific names of trustworthy investigators, warning her about potential retaliation, preparing her for the fight ahead. When they finished, Mitchell's voice was steadier. "Thank you, Sergeant. I do not know if I would have had the courage to do this without hearing your story first." "You have the courage," Elena said. "You just needed someone to tell you it was okay to use it. Call me if you need anything, day or night. You're not alone in this." After the call ended, Elena sat in her car for a long time. Captain Mitchell was not the first soldier to reach out. Would not be the last. Elena's story had become something larger than herself, had become a symbol that standing up to corruption was possible, that surviving the impossible was achievable. She started the car and drove back to her quarters. Tomorrow, she would begin work on the new training curriculum, would help shape how the Army taught ethics and accountability to an entire generation of soldiers. But tonight, she allowed herself to simply be Elena Vos, a woman who had fallen from the sky and refused to stay down, a soldier who had faced evil and fought back with nothing but evidence and determination, a survivor who had turned her trauma into purpose and her pain into progress. She thought about the last year, the recovery, the court-martial, the teaching, the slow process of healing that was still ongoing. She thought about Brennan dying angry and bitter in prison, never accepting responsibility for his crimes. She thought about Martinez deploying to combat, carrying the lessons she had taught him. She thought about Captain Mitchell preparing to expose corruption, inspired by Elena's example. And she thought about her brother, whose death had set her on this path, whose memory drove her to make the army better, whose name on a memorial wall represented both the cost of service and the importance of fighting for change. Elena had been thrown out of a helicopter at 800 feet, had been left for dead by a man who thought murder was easier than accountability, had spent 6 days in hell with broken bones and fading hope. But she had survived, had testified, had taught, had inspired, had changed the system from within. If you enjoyed this story, drop a comment and let us know your favorite part, your favorite character, or if you have witnessed someone show this kind of hidden strength and determination in your own life. Elena Vos parked her car and walked to her quarters under the Georgia stars, the same stars that had shone over Afghanistan while she fought for her life, the same stars that would shine over future soldiers facing their own impossible choices. She had fallen 800 feet. She had hit the rocks and survived. She had crawled from the wreckage and gathered her evidence. She had exposed evil and demanded justice. She had transformed her near death into a mission that would outlive her. And now, 1 year later, she stood as proof that no fall was too far, no odds too impossible, no enemy too powerful if you simply refused to quit. Major Kyle Brennan had tried to erase her, had thrown her away like she was nothing. But Elena Vos was not nothing. She was a survivor, a fighter, a teacher, a symbol that even when the system failed, one determined soldier could force it to be better. She had fallen from the sky, and she had risen from the ashes stronger than before. That was her story. That was her victory. That was her legacy. And she was just getting started.